Hey everyone, red pill, blue pill, am I Agent Smith or Shimmy? That's the story here at reInvent. That's billions and billions of AI agents coming our way. This is a special edition Techstrong Gang. It's just me and Mike Vizard. We're going to bring you up to date. Today's Wednesday. AWL reInvent really kicked off yesterday, so we did do a live sort of recap on that from yesterday. So if you want to go back on Techstrong TV or wherever you're watching this, YouTube or what have you, you can watch it there. But we're going to update what we found out yesterday and what we're hearing today. Mike, it certainly is a different reInvent.
This is true, and there's a lot of chatter in the hallways these days about this open letter that the AWS employees put together last week warning that the company wasn't paying enough attention to the economic and employment and climate impacts of AI. And folks are kind of, starting to ask some questions about, geez, well, what are we doing here? And it feels like, we're still in this go fast and break thing mentality, and maybe they and the rest of the world are starting to ask some more thoughtful questions about what does all this mean?
I got to give you my Shimmy take on this. What does it all mean? What they're really saying is, how many jobs is this going to cost? I happen to be speaking, everyone sooner or later comes to Boca Raton, Florida, to visit a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a parent, or you get old yourself and you'll move there. So I was in Boca Raton last week, and the people renting the townhouse next door to mine, their son, lo and behold, works for AWS. Oh. He's speaking here. I'm not going to mention names. But he said that they have laid off, I think something in the area of 40,000, is it? Or 30,000?
Or at least they have plans to get to that number.
And that's only phase one.
Yeah.
Phase two is in like amount of, I think, 50 or 60,000 people. And so while I admire the gist of the letter that we're doing this for, guns, apple pie, and wrapping ourselves in the flag, there is a certain amount of
no doubt,
preservation here at work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we need regulation of AI? Yes. Do we expect AWS to self-regulate AI and it goes against their shareholders' best interest?
Oh.
No.
So where does this kind of play out at the end of the day? Let's imagine that we automate so many things now that we don't have enough people working to buy the things that we're making through automation, and we just create this kind of cycle where, we kind of have a zero-sum game.
It's the end of poverty, and like Elon says.
Well, so you think universal basic income is going to come?
It's Star Trek. What's the guy's name? Zefram Cochrane. I spoke about him on Shimmy Says.
Uh-huh.
But no, seriously, the issue is they're not wrong about the dangers of this, about the repercussions of this. Mm-hmm. But to expect a single company to stand up to do the right thing against its own maybe baser instincts or the better, the profits to its shareholders is it's a little naive. Now who's being naive?
Is there a demarcation between the interest of companies and the interest of society at this point?
Of course there is. That's capitalism.
That's becoming more pronounced than it's ever been because, the implications and the scale are much different.
Never say it's ever been, because the fact of the matter is it was never as bad as it was during the robber baron days, let's call them, right, of the J.P. Morgans and the Vanderbilts and so forth. However, I'll go back. I'm a political science student. Why do we have a government? Why do we have a social contract to form communities for the common good? We can't expect corporations to work for the common good any more than we can expect any individual to work for the common good. This is political theory 101, by the way, right? You can't expect individuals to always do what's right for the common good. This is why you have a government. This is why you have governments. This is why you have community. We need, whether it's truly the government or a community perhaps of corporations, of individuals and corporations that are working on behalf of the common good. It's unrealistic to think AWS should sacrifice profits or its competitiveness vis-a-vis the market for the common good.
So does somebody need to, is this going to become a plank in a political platform in the next election? And does this become...
Hey, vote for Shimmy.
I didn't know you were running.
Well, I'm waiting to get drafted.
Okay.
Nor will I accept the nomination. Someone said
You just like to be asked.
Yeah, I just want to be asked. But no, seriously, I do think that whenever we stop futzing around with 80-year-old people running to be president of this country and we do pass the torch to a new generation, that this new generation is going to ask these questions. What do we have to do? Should we rein in big tech? How do we rein in big tech? How do we regulate AI while maximizing its benefit to society? That's not a question that an individual corporation should answer. It's a question we need to answer as a people.
All right. And that is exactly what we're talking about in the hallways of this conference these days. I don't think it's happening on the show floor. I don't think it's in the setups because they're all about the tech. But, over a beer, people are going, hey, where are we going? Where are we taking everybody on this ride?
It's funny you bring that up. It reminds me, of course, next month we have our Predict 2026 event. And this, Techstrong's, someone's not Techstrong's Person of the Year. Techstrong's Entity of the Year is AI. That's the theme. And the promo for it is actually two AIs having a beer or sharing a cocktail saying, isn't it great to be an AI right now? Right? I mean, we are the masters of the universe. And I think that is the conversation. Do we ask the AIs to do what's best for humanity and regulate themselves somehow or something? Is that that's a little, the guy's a fish.
They might argue with each other forever and come up with different answers, just like Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, you're right. But maybe they're immune from politics.
Maybe.
I'm just throwing it out there.
I think they would conclude it's the one that builds the most data centers for them is the right answer.
Because they have their self-interest.
There you have it.
So do AIs have their own self-interest? Wouldn't that take a level of consciousness that I don't know if they're...
Or I just have a voracious appetite for memory, so therefore I go from there.
I think you've crossed the line there.
I may have.
But in any event, I am, much like security, I think regulation of AI is going to be a bolt-on, an after. First, we got to get it working and doing all the things it's doing. Then someone's going to say, well, let's rein in those horses, even though it may be too late.
I would give AWS props on 2 points. They did roll out some ability to implement guardrails into AI agents using code.
Us.
And they also have a tool now that analyzes the behavior of the AI agent to see if it's, acting in the appropriate manner to whatever mission it was given, which, you could think of and see how that might be expanded over time.
And kudos to them for doing it. I don't think that's about really regulating the AIs. I think it's just making the AIs more efficient, your agents more efficient. But Mike, I feel like we're biting at the edges here. Let's get to the meat. Well,
the other side of the thing that people are talking about here is the other companies that are here besides AWS are also doing significant things that make a difference. Red Hat's here talking about a partnership with AWS where Red Hat is now taking their stack of OpenShift and all their other platforms and making it available on the AWS AI accelerators, not just the GPUs from NVIDIA. So that tells me that we're going to see the software stack needed to use these other processors, and that's going to lower the total cost of AI. And I think that's a big part of this conversation.
No, we are. I think, it's funny. This is, if not today, within the next day or two, is the 3-year anniversary of ChatGPT.
I think it was yesterday.
It was yesterday. Was the 3-year anniversary? I said within a day or two. Was the 3-year anniversary of the release of ChatGPT. Maybe we didn't know it that day, but shortly thereafter, I think we realized the game has changed. Here we are 3 years later, and we have all that. But Red Hat has certainly, but Red Hat's always been a bellwether AWS partner, I think. Right? And AWS has always been a good partner to Red Hat.
They're frenemies, right? Because Red Hat also talks about portability, and you need to make sure your workloads can run anywhere they want.
And that's a hybrid world, right? And a multi-cloud world, which for I think AWS acknowledges that there is such a thing as hybrid cloud and multi-cloud and everything else. But let me give some kudos to AWS. As much as this reInvent this year is about AI and AI agents, they are really playing up their partners. This partner ecosystem is now 140,000 partners strong worldwide. That's incredible. Incredible. Let me say that again. 140,000 partners in the AWS ecosystem. And they're not all the Red Hats of the world or the SUSEs of the world who we're going to be talking with later, or actually we spoke about yesterday. We spoke with them, and we'll be talking again with them today, who have a whole bunch of AI-themed partnerships with AWS that they've announced here. It's the jobbers, the people who are converting the SMBs, migrating them to the cloud, modernizing the stacks, transforming their businesses by putting them into AWS. It's those people. It's the small, medium, and large software developers and ISVs, independent software vendors. It's an amazing look, Microsoft's always given credit for having an amazing channel. Google's tried to build an amazing channel.
The partners are having the same issues they had with Microsoft, right? And it's the nature of the beast, and you don't know what AWS is going to do 6 months to a year from now. And so if you're a partner with them, you're always kind of like, well, today we're selling together, but a year from now, they may have something that does what we do, and then it'll be more of a complicated relationship, and there'll be this, I think Ray Nordic coined the phrase co-opetition, but the ecosystem, has some inherent
conflict. Well, they're let me call a spade here. There has been a sort of frog and scorpion type of relationship between AWS and partners over the years, in that if AWS sees what the partner's doing is that successful, they don't often buy the partner. They're not one of those companies that does a lot of acquisitions. They just kind of suck the brains out and build it themselves.
They create they take an open source project and make it a service, right?
Absolutely. So there is that. But I will tell you, as Techstrong, speaking on behalf of Techstrong, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been working with the AWS partner team, and they highlight certain partners that we do webinars with and we do our mini portals with to highlight their great content and their services that they bring to market. And it's a deep well of real expertise.
So on a positive side, they put out a study this week talking about, and it's not exhaustive, right? I think they talked through an in-depth interview of so-called 35 partners, and these are not the tech vendors, but more of the service providers. But they did note that, depending on the level of add-on services that you deliver, you can make anywhere from $1.25 to like $7 and change for every dollar that AWS generates.
Yes.
And they're just trying to highlight that the ecosystem, can make more money than AWS does if you take full advantage of it. Now, getting to that $7 mark requires a significant amount of investment in expertise. And so not everybody gets there, but there is room for companies to live in this ecosystem.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I would just, there's the Red Hats, the SUSEs of the world, the F5s of the world. In other words, there's the big vendor partners, let's call them strategic partners, who do a significant amount of business with AWS. Then there's, I call them service integrators.
Yeah, SIs.
Right, who are helping people do the modernization transformation. They're doing the lifting. And they work on a much different margin basis, right? So the $7 for every dollar spent on AWS that's phenomenal business for those guys, right?
Yeah.
They used to working on basis points, basically. And so that's great. But there's also this, like everything else, there's this middle class of, they're not red hats, quite red hats, but let's call them ISVs, people who are building software that kind of make AWS easier to use, that allow you to do some advanced things that maybe AWS does sort of mimic at some point down the road if it becomes too successful.
Yeah, well, if you're going to live in the shadow of something, you got to realize that maybe that thing is alive and it's going to roll over one day.
But you know what? Yes, you're 100. That was a good way of putting it, Mike. But AWS isn't an ogre here. This is something that this has been done this way forever.
I don't think they're malicious about it. I think that they look at it and they say, we've seen enough requests from customers for a certain capability. And there may be some smaller company that saw that same opportunity and moved a little bit faster, but...
Well, they innovated.
Yeah, but once it reaches a certain threshold, you're almost guaranteed that AWS is going to fill that what they perceive as a vacuum that you just happen to be in, and that's when all the air gets sucked out of that particular vacuum,
I think the difference, though, Mike, is... You look at IBM. IBM was notorious, right?
Yeah.
This kind of stuff.
Microsoft has the same rep.
Microsoft, too. But they both bought a lot. Well, not as much Microsoft, but IBM, they buy you.
Yeah.
Right? They bought you. If you had some good technology, they didn't look to reinvent the wheel. They just buy you. Microsoft made their share of it. Cisco, another company. So many people who were in Cisco, went out of Cisco, started a company and got bought back into Cisco.
I think AWS has more of a tendency to try to engineer it themselves first. And then,
it's a made here mentality.
I'm hard pressed to think of, major acquisitions that they've done. And a lot of
their model.
And a lot of it also comes back to, frankly, the way that the platform is built around this Nitro virtualization thing that they have is they need deep hooks into that. And so it's difficult. If I got to buy something, they're going to have to re-engineer it anyway.
Yeah.
So they might as well just write it.
Agreed. If you don't mind, I'd like to turn to security.
Sure.
So there's been some security announcements. There's a security agent, one of the big three agents that AWS is pushing. I don't know if I had to classify, would you call it an AppSec agent or more of a...
It's kind of I call it a DevSec ops agent, right? Because it's really aimed at a developer to sit alongside.
That's what I meant by AppSec. It's on the left side of the event horizon.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
But, when I first got into cloud security, when cloud first came out, I was already into security. And we got into cloud security. Cloud security was much more about operational security, right? My app is up and running. Mm-hmm. Does it have buffer overflows?
It was part of the SecOps conversation.
Yeah, it was SecOps. Let's call it that. You don't hear as much SecOps chatter here as you do, call it AppSec chatter.
Well, yeah, I think that's the nature of this particular market, but I'll point you to some stuff that Sumo Logic was talking about this week.
Okay.
They're building, they're essentially revamping their approach to AI. They're still calling it Dojo, but they are rebuilding it around an MCP server. And what they're saying is that you will have agents for IT ops and agents for SecOps that will share access to the same MCP server, and they will collaborate across each other, and those functions will increasingly be blended. And they're also saying that you can also bring your own third-party agent to that MCP server because they have access to this telemetry data, and that's what all these agents need. So as you start to think about SecOps, does it just eventually just become part of the IT function motion, and these agents are all handling that process? And then there's what we call security today, is the whole policy-driven part of security, where we set up the frameworks and the guardrails. That still is classic security, but the SecOps part of it seems to be melding more and more into the IT ops function.
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. Here's my question on that, though. We're about a year into this MCP thing. It's become this thing. It was December of last year.
Yeah.
And it's December of this year. That's a year in my book. So how many MCP servers do I need? How many MCP servers do I want?
You could have many, or you could have a few really large ones. They're kind of like Kubernetes clusters in my mind. The thing about MCP, though, is it's still early days. I mean, they update MCP every quarter, and what it looks like today doesn't look anything like it looked a year ago.
Well, but, yes and no. What it is and what it does and how it does this become the standard. Mm-hmm. It's just, do I want to use Sumo's MCP server to marry SecOps and Ops? Do I want to use Salesforce's MCP server, ServiceNow's MCP server, Amazon's MCP server? At one level, I'd like a world where I had one MCP server that allows all my agents to talk to each other.
Then does that provider of that MCP server become the dominant soul or entity in all of IT? Because essentially now you're looking to one company to provide the management framework that sits on top of all that MCP servers, and everybody else is plugging in an AI agent into that and becoming a satellite of that company. Or will it kind of continue as we currently have it, where there are maybe 10 large ecosystems that are IT operations frameworks, whether it's ServiceNow or IBM. They all have MCP servers, and other companies are kind of providing agents that sit around that. But I don't see how you make money just providing an agent, so that becomes an interesting challenge. So I feel like there's going to be some sort of convergence here of all these functions and companies as certain things become agents and other things become, the core orchestration layer sitting on top of an MCP server accessing telemetry data. And that's going to be where the split is. But I don't think we're going to recognize this IT landscape as we see it today. In 2 years from now, it won't look anything like it has for the last 10.
Yep. I have 2 words for you, young man. Open source.
Open source.
I think what we need here is an open source MCP server that becomes the de facto standard open MCP server that everyone could use. And then much like Service Mesh on top of Kubernetes, people build things on top of that open source MCP server. So you only really have the one MCP server, and perhaps you have sort of plugins or meshes that sit on top for different functionalities that you're referring to.
It's hard to see how the MCP server provides any differentiated value right now from what...
That's what I'm saying, and that screams open source to me.
And then the battle then comes around the orchestration framework that sits above it, and that's where this thing will be won and lost.
I agree. I think we're in agreement. All right, so let's move on from that.
Let's write this day down.
Yeah. A day that'll live in infamy. No, that's next week. Or later this week. Anyway, so yes, I do think security and AI security, of course, like everything else, AI sucks it up. Now, I wanted to talk about good old-fashioned SecOps. We wound up talking about AI security. What else are you seeing out here, Mike?
I think that is still the vibe. What's amazing to me is just the sheer number of people who are here. And when you go over to the show floor and you're walking around the Venetian, it's like or I don't know what the total number is, but I'm going to say, 25, 30,000 of my closest friends and associates are all walking around over there.
Well, no, I heard the number was closer to 60.
I don't know if it's 60. I think that might be bigger than the Venetian can handle, which is why they're maybe in all these different.
No, but they're all. It's not just at the Venetian. They are all over the place. Interesting, good stuff though. I think we still have 2 more days of coverage basically, today and tomorrow,
and
we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, what's that Chinese phrase about living in interesting times?
How did that become Chinese? I thought it was Irish.
No, I thought that was Chinese. I don't think the Irish made that one, but
I was always told it was an Irishman.
I was always told it was essentially a Chinese curse.
Okay. Okay. And the Chinese probably tell people it was a Jewish thing.
Well, that could be too. And maybe we're all just stealing each other's proverbs.
And that does go around. But you know what else is interesting though? So AWS came out yesterday with this like flurry of announcements, right? And for the PR folks out here, here's a lesson. Don't put your announcement out day one of AWS reInvent because it gets drowned out by the reInvent.
Well, I guess you get apparently maybe 6 hours of lead time because AWS starts putting out its announcements on right around dinner time of the night before the official conference.
Right.
They have their pre-show press conference, and then they have a regular press conference, and they go from there.
But I think day 2 and 3 is a great day to put out news. I'm just saying, throwing it out there for you.
Well, I'll tell you the truth of the matter is by the time I get to all the AWS stuff, it'll be day 2 or 3 before I get to the third party.
There's that many. There are a ton. There's a ton of announcements. I'll tell you something else, though. For those of you watching this live, you're probably not here. And you're asking yourself, should I have gone to reInvent? Should I go to next year's reInvent? What gets lost in the sauce of all of these big announcements is the literally hundreds of sessions. No matter what you're into, no matter where you're looking to expand and learn or dive deeper, there's a session here at reInvent where you could go in and hear someone talking about it, where you can meet like-minded people in the audience that are into that particular aspect of this thing. And it's a great place for networking, for learning. There are AWS education training classes. I think that happened the weekend before reInvent.
Hey, there's some comfort to be taken in the fact that, if you're a little anxious about AI, well, you can walk around with everybody else who is equally anxious and doesn't know exactly what's going to happen either, but
there is
at least it feels better.
And just another enticement to come to reInvent, it's a heck of a lot cooler here than it is in August for Black Hat. So I'll give them that. But Mike, I know you got to get busy back out on the floor. We're going to be here continuing our live coverage, so stay tuned for that. But you've just watched another episode of Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, we're back here live on the floor of Techstrong. We're Techstrong, but we're back here live on the floor of KubeCon, and you're watching Techstrong TV. It's been a long 2 days. Let me introduce you to my next guest. His name is Ido Neeman. Ido is with Firefly, and if you haven't heard of Firefly, don't worry, you're going to. But first, Ido, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's talk about you first.
All right.
Give us the Ido Neeman story.
So I feel at home on the Techstrong floor within the bigger KubeCon Atlanta.
This little gray area right here.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel at home because generally I'm a nerd. Grew up around computers. Served 12 years in the Israeli cyber intelligence.
8200 or?
Something a little bit better, 81.
Oh, 81? Okay.
Yeah. The less digits you get, the better it is.
Okay.
So Then I led technology for a prominent Israeli hedge fund.
Okay.
Then I had a startup in the serverless field. And for the past 4+ years, I'm building Fireflies together with my partner and great team.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know, look, for those of us in the industry, not for nothing, but that's a pretty typical Israeli entrepreneur story, right? I meet a lot of them. For people not in tech, they're like, wow, but this is of course why Israel's a startup country and these kinds of things. It's what you do there. I've started 4 or 5 companies myself over the years, venture, and I've interviewed hundreds of co-founders and entrepreneurs. No one starts a company lightly, right? Everyone, you put your guts into it, right? And then your passion. Talk to us about what was your passion in doing Firefly?
So back in my army days, we obviously did some very complex technology building, but the scale, it's a nationwide scale.
Right.
We did some very large cyber activities, let's put it this way. So always fascinated by doing large things at scale with efficiency. And back then, we were looking at the outside internet and seeing all the tools and wealth of possibilities. And because we are, air-gapped, we need to build everything ourselves to be military grade, we can only build those. So I remember seeing stuff like infrastructure as code coming to life, wanting it, but need to build our own scripts and internal tools to do it. So, when I got out after a good run, started coming to shows like this, and this got me pumped about the possibilities, but also to start thinking about how we harness all of this, because it is quite a lot. You said
yes.
The long 2 days, and we still have at least 1 day to go.
Yes.
So many different conversations, vendors, technologies, 500 talks outside.
Yes.
So imagine that you come to KubeCon and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be cutting edge. I'm going to learn everything. You just can't.
You can't anymore.
Right?
There was a time when you could, right? Maybe the first one in San Francisco.
2018, yeah.
Yeah, not even 20, by 2018, that was already, I think, Seattle. It was big. 2016, 2017, maybe. But yeah, now, it's 200 projects in CNCF alone.
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap around.
So when you say passion is about, hey, let's build the best technology, let's make it scalable and accessible and simple, but also let's allow the end users to actually adopt what's happening here. Because everyone wants to create the new shiny CNCF incubation project. Everyone wants to be, hey, I got the next 10,000 stars and everyone loves me and I'm great, right? Everyone, but at the end, we want people to use our technology.
Right.
We want the end customers of the end customers to gain value out of it. So at some point I said, hey, I think this is both interesting, hard, and might be useful to the world.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, if I had to ask you, define Firefly's mission. You talked a little bit about your passion and how it relates to that, but crystallize it. And you go, look, this camera's on you. Give them Firefly's mission, its reason for being.
Our mission is to make cloud simple, managed, and controlled. So Firefly is an agentic cloud automation platform. Basically, we help you understand everything that runs in your cloud, because as mentioned, 200 projects, 500 vendors, so many practitioners. How do you even know what you have in the cloud? We just saw it 3 weeks ago. We're now talking in November, but in late October of 2025, we saw 2 major outages by AWS and then by Azure,
Sure.
right?
Microsoft.
So now we know that everything runs on the cloud. You can say AI is the most important thing. I don't disagree, but I say AI runs on the cloud. This is why you see all those large AI companies sign deals with cloud. So cloud is the most important mission critical thing we have in our lives. For us, computer nerds, we couldn't get DoorDash to deliver our lunch, so we know something bad
Right.
happened. So important, but it's so complex, it's so expensive, it changes so fast. How do we control and automate it? We don't have one place, one system of record to see our cloud. So this is cloud, agentic cloud automation platform. We connect to everything in your cloud seamlessly, within minutes. We see everything from Oracle to AWS, GCP, Kubernetes, your Datadog, your MongoDB, everything that is cloud related, we see it in one place. Then we sweep in and we tell you over the system of record what's properly controlled and codified, what's governed, what's managed, what's looking like you want it to look like versus unmanaged or misconfigured. Once we establish this, we bring you a bunch of automations. It can be full agents, it can be AI-driven automations, it can be quote-unquote old legacy algorithm-based automations to solve your problems, from deploying to the cloud, to govern it, automating it, and up to recover from an incident like we saw 3 weeks ago.
Excellent. Good. That was good. I wanted to get right, make sure before we forget. Firefly, the website.
Firefly.ai.
.ai.
You can't do it any other way today.
Good.
.com is for boomers,
Easy.
except for DevOps.com.
Right, except for DevOps.com and PlatformEngineering.com. Though we do have AI and IT ones too. There you go.
You see,
Yeah, well, we like to spread it around. But let's talk, so now let's fast forward, right? We understand the problem that you're solving, a little of the history and passion. As the company exists today, right? And we live, yes, cloud's very important. Agentic AI is probably be very important, is very important now, will be more important next year and the year after. Where is the company, like when you're talking to people here on the floor today, what are the conversations you're having? What are we talking about?
first we're talking about where are the best parties post the conference, right?
Wow, that's
It's
the most important thing.
Yes, of course. The second thing, if you want to take the AI route, one thing that we've noticed, and we actually learned about it from our customers, not that we found it ourselves, is that today application software is being written by AI. Mm-hmm. Everyone uses Cursor or Copilot or Cloud Code or doesn't matter what, right? But when we talk about cloud infrastructure, it's still being run manually with ClickOps or line-by-line Terraform, OpenTofu at best. It doesn't make sense. How come all my back-end engineers and front-end engineers are writing to Cursor, hey, help me do this and that, I'm now writing application and the agents do it, but the infrastructure that powers it all is still old way. It doesn't make sense. So people are looking for ways to integrate AI into infrastructure management. We see it through our MCP server. So MCP servers allows you to use your Cursor, your Cloud Code, your GitHub Copilot in tandem with Firefly, so you just talk to your AI assistant, hey, I want to now deploy this application into AWS US East 1. What do I need to change? Goes to Firefly, see, and it solves it. So this is one thing. Moving from manual scripted cloud ops into AI and agentic cloud ops, just like software engineering moved it. This is the first thing. The second thing, as I see it, is how to incorporate agents into your day-to-day workflows. Because everyone wants it, right? After every single board meeting, you'll see the CEO coming to the CTO, which comes to the VP, which comes to the developer. We need more AI. Now, if you don't adopt AI, you're fired. If you adopt AI and you make mistakes, you're fired. Yeah. I don't like those.
Either way, you're fired.
Probabilities are bad.
Right.
But what happened? So if you remember 2 months ago, a vibe coding solution created an application, deployed it to the cloud, changed it, and then it deleted a production database.
Lied about it.
Yeah. I'm here to talk about the good stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll leave you to talk about the more problematic stuff later, yeah? So it deleted it. Now everyone say, hey, we can't use the agents and vibe coding in production. It's nice for your hobby. I want my grandma's recipe application. Right, cool. But I won't let it run.
Not mission critical.
Right, my trading solution. So what do we need? Because at some point, we will need agents to do it because we don't have enough platform engineers, DevOps engineers out there, SREs to do it. We will have it. What are we lacking? We're lacking context. I need the agents or the AI-driven automation to know that this database is being used by other teams, maybe deployed on other lines of business, other continents. How do I know it? If I have this system of record for cloud, this is the first thing I know. And the second one is guardrails. So as we see it, when we talk to the market, we see AI is being treated like a very good protege or an intern. You want it to do stuff, but only to some extent. So you say, hey, AI deploy to dev account, maybe to staging, but you don't deploy to production. So you need a guardrail that says, hey, agents can deploy to staging, but when it comes to production, you must have a human in the loop, so it opens a pull request for you to do a code review for it. And so all of these types of limitations. So to wrap it up, we need to adopt AI in our infrastructure management and operations and not just for application, because usually infrastructure moves faster than application development. And the second one is have the context and the guardrails to really adopt agents into platform engineering.
I love it. So, you know, so that's what should happen, right? The world's full of what should happen. Not, you know, but that's not necessarily what happens. Now, and Firefly's mission is to make sure that happens, or to help make that happen.
Enable, yeah.
Enable it. Do you see, and one of the things I see, look, I've been in technology a long time, right? I got the dot-coms. But there's a gap between what should happen and when it happens. How big a gap is that? This vision you have of how this should work, when are we going to actually see that?
So, you know, many people ask me why we have agentic cloud automation. So the first thing is that they don't let us into KubeCon floor, or sorry, Techstrong floor without agentic in your name,
If you
right?
don't got AI, you don't have,
Exactly, but because everyone is talking about it, everyone wants it, but we're still in the gearing up stage.
Right.
What I talked about, the context and the MCP, this is reality. We have many customers, I'm not talking about a handful, we have many customers who are today consuming Firefly with an MCP first mindset.
Really?
So no UI, no API, MCP first. And I'm not talking only about the cool kids from Silicon Valley running the AI shops. I'm talking about some very large enterprises,
Really?
legacy enterprises, Fortune 500s, and I love seeing it because it means that it's now, you know, it's mainstream.
Yeah.
We are at the height of it, and it's great. For the actual agents to deploy, it will take some more time because not enough context, not enough guardrails, and we can still...
And not enough trust.
Exactly.
I think that's it too. But that's interesting that you have MCP first. Because you think about it, what MCP came out about a year ago now only.
Makes sense, yeah.
December, I think, last year. And now we think about it, we talk about it like it's been here forever, but it's not even a year old. But here you are selling MCP first.
I think that, you know, you don't need to tell you how successful those big AI companies, but even the companies like Cursor and Windsurf, they're so popular. And every developer, software engineer today asks themselves, how can I get better? How can I get stronger? And if you don't do it, it's not that you're getting better. It's like inflation. Your power goes down, right? So everyone, even just to keep up,
it's just table stakes at this point.
And now the platform teams, the SRE teams, they say, hey, we are now behind because they have it writing code. But what about our infrastructure? What's the difference? Code, as a new code deployed for application, is most often new. And it's similar. Every company's, every organization's infrastructure is a snowflake. And it comes, if you're not a 5-person startup, you come with a very big baggage that you need to carry with you and understand and tap into. So this is why it was harder for them to do it. So if you allow them to run as fast as the application teams, they just embrace it. And they love it, and they come back to the CIO, hey, you told us to adopt AI, we're adopting it, see how cool is it? Hey, I'm talking to the MCP server, show me all drifts in my account, Firefly fixes it. Hey, here's a misconfiguration. Let's use AI to solve it. So Firefly finds the problem, the MCP creates the solution, then we bake it into infrastructure as code, we deploy it, people just love it. It's, the future is here. We're living in a place where everything can be quick and effective.
It is an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah.
I will say that, boomer or not. Ido,
Thank you so much, sir.
thank you. Ido Neeman, Firefly, here on Techstrong TV, on the Techstrong TV floor, as far as the eye can see. We're going to take a break. We're back with more. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back here to Techstrong TV. Let me introduce you to Jon Scolamiero.
Yeah,
Scolamiero?
Scolamiero, you got it. Perfect.
All right. Hey, Jon. Jon is the CISO and lead product manager for Americas for Mendix, which is actually a Siemens company, a Siemens business. But Jon, first of all, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on here.
Man, it's a real pleasure to be here, Alan. Thanks for inviting me and allowing us to talk a little bit about what's going on in the wide world of DevOps. So I'm pretty excited.
Always good stuff going on. But before we get into that, Jon, let's talk a little bit about you. As I mentioned, when we were green rooming there for a while, it's not often, especially in a non-security company, or every company's a security company in my world, but in a company that's not known necessarily as a cyber company, where we see a CISO is also the lead product manager.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about that, but let's take it from the beginning. You were born, and then what happened? No, I mean,
I spent
give us your
20 years
journey.
out. Just kidding.
Yeah.
So but prior to joining Mendix, I had a little over 15 years in software development architecture, including working at some of the largest names in energy and finance. So in fact, I like to joke around that it's often that I would end up with managers who'd say, well, I used to code, but I don't do that anymore. And I joke because I'll say, oh, actually, I still code in my free time for fun. So it kind of keeps me fresh. Then through a number of different circumstances, I ended up landing at Mendix, which is a low-code software development platform, partially because I worked for a company that was a customer of theirs, and I really liked the modeling approach that Mendix was taking. And so that led to multiple different roles here at Mendix. And most recently, I've been leading up the field product management for Americas. And that then led into the field CISO role, which is interesting because what my European colleagues have found is that the security posture and the governance posture within the Americas is very different than what they're used to. And understanding that and tailoring a low-code soup to nuts software development lifecycle that fits into that sort of box is really difficult, especially if you're not used to thinking that way. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean we can't be cloud first or cloud native while doing it, but you have to check the boxes. And as we got more and more into the highly regulated spaces, including federal, they needed somebody who was a US citizen on US soil to show up and understand not just the technical side, but the security side as well. And it just sort of naturally flew with my background. So that's how I ended up with the CISO and the field product manager title. So a little complicated, but hopefully not too crazy.
No, not too crazy at all. What a great, because I will tell you, I have about 30 years in tech. Other than the last 10, 12 years, I was a startup guy, and about 25 years in security. And though I think today we see the EU probably has a little bit more process, a little bit more rigor in security compliance, once you start getting into the highly regulated industries, finance, healthcare, and then once you get into the Fed space, which in my last security company, about 65% of our business was actually DoD. And DoD and agencies, the three-letter agencies.
Yeah.
Then now that cyber expertise and the amount of cyber certifications and accreditations really, gets ratcheted up a lot. I spent an awful lot of time at Fort Huachuca, for instance, in the Army Information Assurance Technology labs there, getting our products certified and so forth. So it makes a lot of sense to me. You mentioned no code, you mentioned Mendix, and I think Mendix is, to a certain extent, with some of our audience, synonymous with no code, low code, no code. Does that make you feel comfortable or not quite, Alan?
So I would put it solidly in the low code bucket. And I think one of the things that attracted me to Mendix when I was on the customer side of the equation is that every conversation I had with Mendix was about respect. It was about respect for the person doing the work and respect for the person trying to get value out of the work, right? So you kind of got respect on both sides of the coin. And they gave you a beautiful modeling environment, but the minute that you need to flip the switch and dive into code or do something more complex, they didn't hold your hands or try to lock you in. They instead said, go for it, and here's how you hook into us. And that openness is very attractive. And I actually think as we get into more of the AI conversation, that sort of openness, that approach is very relevant as we think about things like AI transparency and trust and responsibility. And it also helps you understand in your DevOps and software development lifecycle journey, what's happening at each piece of the puzzle. So that way, not just the doer, but the stakeholder knows what's happening. And I think that's really important. So I feel like we solidly fit into the low code space rather than the no code space. And I don't think that our goal is to enable everyone. We used to have the slogan, go make it. Our goal is for the makers and to enable the makers to do good work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John, I wanted to segue into DevOps, right? So I will tell you that low code is an area that we have covered extensively on DevOps.com since I started DevOps.com in 2013, 14. A lot of people may say, wait a second, how does low code, fit into the DevOps kind of puzzle? But it does, right? Because it's about automation. It's about kind of breaking down the silos and all of, just because we're doing this in a low code environment doesn't mean that we don't have the same issues around deployment security, operating that code, everything else that goes into a modern, software factory, if you will. But from where you sit, John, how do you see that connection?
Well, it's really interesting that you bring that up because I like to say there's no such thing as magic. The rules and laws of physics still apply. Okay. At the end of the day, it may be Terraform, it may be Helm charts, whatever it is, there's still a thing doing the work on the soup and nuts and bolts underneath the covers. It's just how you present that to the end user or to the stakeholder that matters, right? So at the end of the day, whether you're looking at a series of DevOps experts or you're literally just looking at an old Windows administrator, at the end of the day, they're still trying to get a piece of capability into the hands of somebody to get some sort of value out of it, or in order to manage that, to understand what's going on. And so our approach at Mendix is to just make that transparent, but still automated and put some nice packaging and wrapping around that. So, for example, if you want a fully managed SaaS offering, we've got that. If you need to own and control your own environment and understand every step of the way, we've got that too. If you understand how to build pipelines in Jenkins or Azure DevOps, go for it. If you need a pipelines product that does it for you, we have that too. So it's at the end of the day, you're still packaging and shipping some piece of executing software. It's just at what level do you need to know and understand that to be successful? And at what level can your organization know and understand that?
Agreed. I agree. So, John, DevOps, well, for me anyway, DevOps is a subject area, a market that has been evolving, changing since I first encountered it 14 years ago, 15 years ago. But obviously, we live in interesting times. We've got AI and the rise of shadow AI. vibe coding, right? We're turning out more code than we ever did before. It's like, and as if we didn't have enough toys to play with, AI has rendered, infinite amount of new toys and apps and methodologies.
Mm.
Uh, Platform engineering, another big thing that has risen, let's say in the last 4 years, maybe 5 years. As you look at the DevOps space now, and let's qualify that as it applies to the Mendix business, as it applies to low code. How are all these, I don't want to call them, well, AI is a mega trend,
Yeah.
but how are all these different trends kind of shaping the market and what you see going forward?
Well, I think one of the trends that I'm seeing, and I think it's a change. I'm unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I'm old enough to remember when DevOps was controversial. When you would say DevOps and people would just freak out and not really understand what you're talking about. Um, and I think there's also a lot of denial and sort of avoidance that enter the equation.
I got the
It,
scars to prove it, my friend.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we're
was
in a.
DevOps.com, right? And yeah, I caught the brunt of that.
I just actually a couple weeks ago just recorded a webinar about CMMC 2.0, which is a new standard that's come out from the federal government around contractors doing business and the technical rigor that they have to go through to prove that they're secure enough to do business with our government these days. And the message there, and actually, if you look at the controls, DevOps solves so many of them if you do it right and well. And the message at the bottom line is it's not optional. It is now non-optional. And moreover, it's not optional because it's safer, it's more secure, and it enables and empowers your people to do the work that they need to do rather than restricting them. It's not a control mechanism, it's an enablement mechanism that you can build safety, security, and governance around. The tricky part here, and I think you look at all these trends like vibe coding, AI in the loop, human in the loop for AI, and all of the other things that are going on, how that fits into the software development lifecycle and how you and I think governance is an abused term, but how you govern, control, and build in safety without throwing the pendulum too far in one way or the other is really key. I think some of that we're starting to get figured out, and some of that has not been figured out at all yet. And in fact, I think 2026 was actually a prediction we just released. I think 2026 is the year that we have the major AI security breach. I think that we haven't had the major AI explosion yet. This is the year something goes wrong, right? Like the Target breach or something similar, the Equifax breach, right? This is the year we have that for AI. And it's not because that's impossible to control for now. It's that we're not being as responsible and transparent and trustworthy as we run this race as we should be, which kind of is expected. But with great power, as the saying goes, comes great responsibility, and
Mhm.
those capabilities are key. So what we're doing at Mendix a little bit, and I hate to self plug, but we're really honing in on not just enabling and empowering people to go build and make, but also to understand, there's always a human in the loop. There's always a guard and a check, but then that responsibility and trust needs to be visible to a layer of people who don't understand how the technology is executing what it's doing. And that's true whether you're building the software or whether you're deploying it. And I think a very poorly, I don't want to say it's poorly understood. It's not widely understood, but this concept of software supply chain is just so crucial and critical, as you can see with some of the recent issues with NPM packages, and the recent breaches there. It's something that we have to get our hands around in a way that is enabling and empowering, rather than, I think you and I are both old enough to remember the fallout of Sarbanes-Oxley, and we just quadrupled the time it takes to get anything done. We don't want to end up in that scenario again, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Absolutely. And I think, that's a high wire balancing act, right? Providing compliance that's worth its salt versus the level of bureaucracy, if you will. And it's something we, as we move from EU to North America, I think there is a different focus. It's not focus. You know what it is? In America, I don't know if we have the political will to get things done as much as they seem to have over in the EU with some of these newer compliant, even just AI itself compliance, right? The EU is kind of way out in front of that. We're still talking about how much, trillions of dollars we could gather up to spend on this thing. So I do, it's going to be an interest. I think, look, these things have a way of kind of smoothing out over time. And it's going to be an interesting couple of years here as we see sort of, the quest to do more fast versus the imperative to do it safely and securely. They got to cut, at some point they've got to come together. They can't exist in two separate kind of planes. But anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's going to be it's interesting time. I mean, there's so much going on, and it's interesting times. Jon, I wanted to let people know. Look, if you're interested in what we're talking about here, if you're interested in what Mendix is about and what they're doing, Jon, what's the best way to engage with Mendix?
That's easy. Mendix.com, Mendix.com. We have lots of, whether you're in the defense space, the industrial space, finance, banking, whatever, we have lots of user information, user stories, user journeys, testimonials. You can get demos. We also have a lot of really good, well thought out white papers and guides around governance, around executing and building COEs, around how do you do this in a highly regulated fashion, right? Amanda, we've had one of our most popular guides, the guide for our defense industrial base folks. So please, Mendix.com. You can also reach out to me. It's Jon.Scolamiero, and I'm sure you guys will have that out, hard to spell, at Mendix.com. I'm happy to connect you with the right folks here at Mendix. And Alan, there's some interesting trends here around what vibe coding is, what AI can really do, but also the cost in human capital, the cost in human knowledge and understanding that we're just starting to be able to tackle. And I think they're interesting discussions to have. I was looking through some of the things at DevOps.com and Tech TV. I really like some of the thoughts that are going on there, especially around responsible AI, and I really look forward to seeing more of that content up. So it's been a real pleasure to be here and talk with you a little bit about it.
Well, Jon, don't worry too much. Elon says the robots are going to take all our place.
Oh,
we're
yeah.
going to eliminate poverty, and we're all going to get a basic income, a livable basic income. So let the good times roll. Anyway, Jon, it's a pleasure having you on. Keep up the great work. Come back and visit us. Keep us posted on what's going on at Mendix, okay?
I'd love to, Alan. All right. Cheers, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Jon Scolamiero, CISO Lead Product Manager Americas for Mendix here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. Hey everyone, welcome back. We're live here at KubeCon. I guess the show floor is open because I see a lot of people walking around, but it is a huge show floor, and we're down. Well, you're looking this way, but behind us that way is the meals and seating area. To our right is all of the different projects from the CNCF. I think there's over 200 projects now, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. And it's getting a little crowded here, which is good because it brings the heat of the place up. It's so cold down here. Let me introduce you to my next guest. His name is Yotam Yemini.
Nailed
Did I
it.
get that right?
A+.
Beautiful. Yotam is the CEO of Causley, company you probably heard about. who you've heard of, but I don't know if you know everything they do. Yotam, welcome to Techstrong TV. Let's start with you.
Yeah.
You're the CEO of Causley. How did you get here?
So Causley is my 5th startup, the first one that I'm fortunate enough to be the CEO of. But actually, this whole team that I joined here at Causley was a team that was part of my first startup, a company that was called VM Turbo. You may remember VM Turbo. Eventually, we rebranded the company into Turbonomic, acquired by IBM for $2 billion in 2021.
Beautiful.
And in 2022, Causley was founded. I actually joined the team in 2024. At that time, I had actually gone to another startup that was acquired by Cisco. And so I was working inside of Cisco, running the incubation team for the security business unit.
Okay.
And Shmuel, who's the founder of Causley, who I believe you've had on your show, pulled me out of Cisco and said, "Hey, why don't you come join us here in Causley?" And for me, it's like a full 360 career moment to come back with the team where I started it all.
Your team, that's a great thing. Look, Techstrong is probably the 5th or 6th, at least, startup I've done too. Though this one, not venture back. This is the first one I did that, no venture. And there's something to be said for working with people you're comfortable with.
100%.
You need fresh blood, but when you work with people that you've worked with, in my case, 20 years or more,
Yes.
especially in my exec team,
Yes.
it's comfortable.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're a remote first company like we are, I think that added measure of trust and knowing how to communicate with each other, when you got to kind of get right to the point, really helps.
Huge. And so did you come in as CEO in 2024?
I did. Yes, I did.
Very cool. So I mentioned a lot of people out here may have heard of Causley. I don't know how many of them really know Causley, though. So if you wouldn't mind, Tom, let's start there. What's Causley? Well, in your own words.
Yeah, so we're on a mission to help people automate service reliability. We can unpack that further. But if you had Shmuel in this seat, he would tell you that this is really a continuation of his life's work. So the first startup that Shmuel co-founded was a company called Smarts in the 90s.
Yep.
And Smarts was a leading provider for root cause analysis for networks. Turbonomic, just jumping ahead to the second company, that's where I joined the team and started working with Shmuel very early on in the day, was automating resource management for cloud and virtualized infrastructure. If you think about this is like the continuation of that journey, which makes a lot of sense because cloud native applications are an interconnected web of microservices that are very functionally similar to complex networks.
Sure.
And what everyone is trying to do is trying to apply AI in a way to automate the reliability of those services. And we believe we have a unique insight and a lot of lived experience to solve hard problems in the space.
So let me ask you an honest question. So I remember talking with Shmuel. He lives in New York, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant guy, right?
Yes.
He's been working on this issue long before AI was a thing.
Yes, as he likes to say, the first hype cycle of AI in the 80s.
Yeah, the first time. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But today it's disrupting everything, right? It sucks the oxygen from everywhere. And in some ways, I guess it's been good for Causley because you're already on that road for this.
Yes.
But in some ways, it had to have disrupted Causley go to market, right? Because now you've got to accelerate AI adoption, accelerate integration, accelerate, riding this wave.
Well, I think in some ways it's been a good tailwind. I mean, I think you've heard this term
Probably
AI.
the best tailwind you've ever had.
Yeah, you've heard this term AI SRE flying around.
Yep.
And so there's a lot we can unpack there. But I think if you go back to like our time at Turbonomic, we used to tell people we were going to help them automate where to place workloads across infrastructure. And the idea of automation was scary to people. I think now we're sort of seeing this turn where everyone's saying, okay, I have to find a way to drive productivity gains. I have to use AI to automate things. And the good news is we're sort of at this like nice intersection where people are trying to automate operations and they're learning what they can do with these agentic systems. And also they're learning what the limitations are of those systems. And that's where we really have a unique value proposition offer to the market in terms of what our product does.
Excellent. Love it. AI SRE. Let's unpack that one. That's
Yes.
a good one. So, you know, like every other job function, I think in tech, AI is having its way, if you will. I don't know if it's patently obvious to our audience how this is applying in the world of SRE.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So we'll talk about what's out there, and we can also then sort of unpack some of the limitations. So some of the good in the space is it makes a lot of sense that if I need to write a post-mortem and learn from why an incident happened, using a language model to write up a summary makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It also would make sense that if I'm trying to parse through a lot of unstructured log data to look for something meaningful, again, using a language model, which in a lot of ways is like a pattern matcher or a pattern finder, could make a lot of sense. And so I think what you're seeing on the market today that's gaining some traction are these effectively like new age chatbots that SREs are using to help them troubleshoot. Gartner recently came out with a cool vendor report around the AI SRE space.
Really?
They missed us on that one, but they're going to get us on another one. But one of the things that they mentioned in that article was that every AI SRE company they covered is missing the point and missing the fundamental opportunity, which is that the bigger opportunity is to actually help the service owning product development teams to automate reliability as part of how they build their products. And the idea to only apply AI to the SRE function as an SRE function is actually missing this opportunity of bringing reliability engineering as a sort of first-class citizen to a product development team.
So I have my own opinions with Gartner, but I'm not going to voice them here. Over the years at other startups I've done, of course, I paid the money that I think we all pay in ransom to Gartner.
There is a tax.
Yeah.
Yes.
We
have not paid the tax. We were not in the report.
Right, the original ransomware. But let's talk about this though. If we use AI to build that automation and reliability at the product level, doesn't that make sort of SREs a little obsolete?
So it's an interesting point. I would tell you the best SREs I've ever worked with always describe their job as automating themselves out of a job.
Sort of like that commercial. I want to be obsolete by the time I'm 35.
Yeah, and you know, you've probably heard the saying like AI is not taking your job.
Someone
the person
who knows AI.
Yeah, someone who knows how to use AI to do your job is taking your job.
Yeah.
But I think AI at this point for a lot of people just means using language models, which is different than what Causely is doing. And I think that starts to lead to the limitations of some of these AI SREs that are out there. And people are starting to learn that, you know, it's like ChatGPT. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. And, you know, if you're trying to automate reliability, you can't use something that's
Right.
coin flip, whether it's going to be right or not.
Yeah, I was in the hosting business for a long time. And back then, and even still today, 5 nines. Give you an SLA 5 nines.
Yep.
But what a lot of people didn't realize is even with 5 nines, I think it's 4 minutes or so. I forget how many minutes a month.
Yeah.
You're down and you're still in your 5.9 SLA. And for people who are mission critical, those couple of minutes a month means a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll go even the next step, which is that, and again, maybe this is a colloquial thing that people already have grown tired of talking about, but for some people, slow is the new down, right?
Yeah.
So there's also the point that if you can apply the ethos of reliability engineering and you take SRE in terms of the idea of error budgets and SLOs for every service and a blameless postmortem and all these other sort of ethos elements of the SRE culture, and you apply that to how you build software, you end up not just troubleshooting things faster, but preventing issues in the first place. And that's really the big opportunity that we see, particularly for how our model and our system works.
Love it. Now, so do you think you are, who's your target customer here then? The product manager or the SRE?
So I'll give you a different persona, which is the software engineering manager. So the people
Okay.
that are building the
Fair.
actual customer-facing services and applications. We have real money gaming clients that they use us for their sportsbook app and their casino app.
Sure.
We have SaaS companies where it's the development teams that are building the customer-facing product. And look, at the end of the day, we also do have SREs and platform engineers that use the product.
No, just going to say, the software engineering teams, probably a lot of platform engineering in here now, though, too.
Yeah, because a lot of the shape of these problems with cloud native applications is because everything's an interconnected web and you're trying to figure out, is the problem in the app or is it in the infrastructure, or is it one of my friends likes to say, is it an issue or an ish me?
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. It is.
So it's a problem that really spans personas and user types, but we really do find that when we are the most successful in a customer, it's because an engineering manager or a director of software engineering really adopts the idea that, hey, I want to automate reliability work, help me do that.
So that's not really top down, though. It's not, because it's not the
Middle.
C
It's
level.
like middle out.
It's
Yeah.
middle out,
Yeah.
up and down.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. And then, but man, we jumped into things, and I didn't get a chance to talk more about Causely, the website.
Yes, Causely.ai. And if Causely.ai is too much to remember, sharkslovesugar.com.
Sharks love sugar. Love it.
Yes.
So now you've said it. Where's that come from?
Well, so, the sort of next best alternative to what Causely does, which is we're building this causal model of the cause and effect between things in your environment. The next best alternative is a correlation engine. And so we like to sort of have this play on correlation is not causation.
Right.
Just because there are more shark attacks in the summer doesn't mean that sharks love sugar. Right? Because, ice cream consumption also goes up in the summer.
Got
That's
it.
the idea. So
It's
that's
sweeter.
Yes. So if you go to sharkslovesugar.com, it'll take you to Causely.ai.
Causely.ai it is. I know you guys recently announced an MCP server. Without making it a me too, tell me what's the deal there.
Yeah, so look, for development teams, which is who we're really trying to appeal to, you got to be where they work. And where they work is in their IDE.
Yeah.
And so everything that Causely does, we expose not just through our UI, but also via an API, also via a webhook, and now as of recently, an MCP server as well. So if you're a developer and you're in your IDE and you, for example, want to improve the Java heap size in a JVM, how do you know when you're actually going to get your bang for your buck to do those types of things? Or let's say you want to change you've got a slow database query that you need to optimize. You could run a profiler to always do those things, but how do you know you're really getting the juice for the squeeze? And so our causal model is helping you understand the actual cause and effect in terms of sort of at a meta level, which optimization actually gets me something from a performance perspective, sort of the bang for the buck of the work I'm going to go do. So we're exposing everything from our causal model now via an MCP server.
I love it. I love it. Isn't it amazing though? I mean, I think, to be fair, I think MCP came out last December, not January or February. But within a year, I mean, we talk about it like it's, table stakes. I anteed up, right?
Yeah.
Let's play poker. At some level, it still kind of freaks me out how quickly this whole thing is really just coming together.
Well, I think, can I add a little thought on
Sure.
that? Is that I think we're seeing like markets go in waves from bundling to unbundling. And I think that particularly in the part of the market that we're in, there's this sort of unbundling to build your sort of best in class
Right.
observability stack.
That's always how that pendulum swings, right? Especially when it's newer stuff, because we're still figuring it out. And then once kind of best practices really emerge, then you go back to the bundling.
At some point.
Makes the world go round, my friend,
Yes.
right? What about KubeCon?
Yes, but so far so good. It is buzzing. Like you said, it's starting to buzz, and
It will.
I'm excited about what's
it's
here.
It's a very passionate crowd. I will tell you, I've been covering KubeCon now for, I don't think the first year, but 8 or 9 years. And it used to be all developers and all people like in t-shirts and backpacks. And I do both here and the European one. Over the years, I've seen more people wearing sports jackets, more ops people, of course, SRE people, platform engineers. So it's diversified into quite a community, but it's a community that's passionate. It's passionate about open source. It's passionate, obviously, about, doing more faster in the cloud. Though the other thing about cloud native is it's not necessarily in the cloud.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Right? It could be on bare metal, it's on the edge, it's everywhere. Anyway, hey man, pleasure having
Hey,
you on.
great. Thanks for having
Say
me.
hello to Spiel for me.
Yes, thanks.
Let's see if I remember this right. Yotam Yemini.
Yemini. You
Yemini.
got it great the first time.
I did,
Just
but
clip it, and
that
if
was
we weren't live, they could
15
clip it
minutes.
and replay
No,
it.
they expect this from me. You know what I mean? I can never
Very
do
good.
it. I'm like AI. I can never do the same thing twice. Exactly. More importantly, Causley.ai or sharkslovesugar.com.
Yes, very good. Thanks
I
again.
love it. All right, we're live at KubeCon. We'll be back here in a moment. Hey, everyone. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. My next guest is Jeff Baxter. Jeff is the VP of Product Marketing at NetApp. Let's welcome him. Hey, Jeff, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
No problem. So, Jeff, I always like to let our audience get a glimpse behind the curtain, if you will, of who's talking to them. So if you wouldn't mind, I mean, beyond your name and your title and your work at NetApp, give us a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So, if we start back in the Paleolithic era, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, hunting mammoth. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been with NetApp for now 18 years. So a fair amount of time in Silicon Valley. Before
Wow.
that, I was a Solaris admin and a SAN admin, maintain, large scale data storage systems, and joined NetApp as a systems engineer, ended up as the CTO for the Americas. So spent a lot of time being sort of the senior technical advisor to a ton of senior enterprise companies that are using NetApp. Made a change after that. It turns out that's a fun job, but when you have young kids, the 99% travel is a little bit much. So I made a switch
Been
into
there,
product.
done that.
Yeah. So I made a switch into product management and ran large parts of product management for our enterprise storage systems for several years. And then about 2 years ago, they asked me if I'd take on a leadership role running sort of global product marketing for NetApp. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years. But so it's been a fun journey here. A lot of change in the
love it.
industry. Yeah.
Yes, it has. Hearing you mention some of those names makes me smile.
Yeah.
Solaris and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My first
Yeah.
tech company I started in 96.
Yeah.
96. We were a Sun shop running all Solaris and stuff like that. And there was
Yeah.
something to be said for Solaris, my friend.
Yeah, there
You know,
was. There was. The
There
other
was
day
a-
I was editing a demo for our keynote, and I suddenly had to drop into VI and was sitting there going like, oh
Mhm.
man, this is taking me back, right? So
Yeah,
it was
Those
a lot of
were the
fun.
days, though. But it
Yeah.
worked. It worked
Yeah,
great.
it worked.
And your path is unique, but not that unique. I have a lot of friends who, came from, quite frankly, coding and engineering backgrounds, and then 10, 12 years into their careers, 15 years into their careers, switched over to, they call it the business side of the house.
Yeah.
And doing that. And I think it makes for a better business person having had that, the dirt under your fingernails, if you will, of working in the trenches on code and on systems and stuff like that. So kudos to you and congratulations. Jeff, NetApp is a company that, our audience, if I ask 10 people in the audience, 9 of them are going to say, yeah, no, of course I know NetApp, network attached storage, hardware. But, today's NetApp is more than that. How would you describe it to our audience who are tech people, right? So you don't have to be
Yeah.
too elementary. But
Yeah.
how would you describe NetApp today?
I think it's interesting because you started that core as network attached storage. And one of the nice things I like about NetApp is we haven't stopped doing anything we've been doing for 30 years, right? So we take that network attached storage that we basically invented, or at least popularized and grew to what it is today back in 1992 when we were founded. And we built on top of that unified storage. So the idea of being able to put block storage around it. And we were really the first to unify block and file and then object storage, and have built out to an entire unified data storage portfolio that spans basically every workload you can possibly have on-prem. And then on top of that, I think the extending it out to hybrid multi-cloud has really been the journey that we were on for the past 10 years, to the point where we're the only ones really embedded natively, not just in one major cloud, but in all three of the largest clouds out there. So it's an interesting business we're in, where we built out this intelligent data infrastructure, as we call it, right? That's the marketing term. But what it fundamentally means is you're able to take the same operating system, NetApp ONTAP, and run it across any workload in any data center and in any of the major clouds. And so fundamentally, that's the backbone of NetApp's business today, is providing that intelligent data infrastructure that lets people manage data pretty much wherever, right? On-prem, in the cloud. I love that we're fundamentally agnostic to wherever the best place is to run your workload. And we'll support you with these sort of enterprise-grade features and data management, regardless of where it is.
I love it. Jeff, I think that's a great way of describing what NetApp is, who NetApp is today in the market, and where you are. But of course, you know what they say in tech: if you're not moving forward, you're dying, right? And today, when we talk about moving forward, you can't move forward without talking about AI, whether it's generative or agentic or whatever comes next. Everybody wants to know kind of, what's your AI story? How is AI impacting what you're doing? How are you going to leverage AI? AI. It sounds like EIEIO.
There you go.
But, let me ask you, how big an impact has AI already had on NetApp's business, and as you go planning, going forward?
Yeah, so obviously AI is incredibly strategic for us. Specifically, we partner with NVIDIA, with Intel, with so many of the leading AI, startups. And I think what's fundamentally cool about what NetApp does is we're not out there trying to sell another AI model. We're not trying to do any of that. There are hundreds of companies to do that. What we're focused on is the same thing we've been focused on for 30 years, which is around the data. And the fundamental problem for a lot of businesses with AI is, everyone looks at, what model am I going to use? How am I going to get all the GPUs I need? Am I going to do it on-prem? Am I going to go to one of the neo clouds? Am I going to use a hyperscaler? But what they don't always focus on is, do I actually have the data in place to support whatever AI I build? And no matter what analyst firm you look at or what study you look at, there was one that said 60% of AI projects over the next year are going to fail because of lack of AI-ready data. So you can solve all these, crucial problems about having data scientists in place, having the right models in place, everything like that. But if your data is scattered, and if your data isn't compliant, and if it isn't prepared for training, for inferencing, for retrieval augmented generation, it doesn't matter. And so that's really what NetApp has been focused on over the last couple of years as we built up for this, era of AI, is how can we really at your fingertips, present AI-ready data for your data engineers and your data scientists to immediately be able to put to use.
Agreed. Now, I don't want to be a glass half empty or a glass half full. I'm going to try to play this right down the middle. But you know what, Jeff? As we're 2-3 years into this AI revolution, evolution, whatever you want to call it, and like every other tool that I've seen come down over the last 35 years of my career, there's always the question of, does it scale? How do we get it to scale? How do we get people to let down their guard, thinking it's not taking their job away or what have you, right? What do you think is the biggest obstacle to scaling AI adoption?
Not to be repetitive, but I think it's about allowing AI to have access to the right data. And from both directions, right? If AI doesn't have access to your enterprise's data, it becomes fundamentally just a chatbot, right? And so I think we've all used general purpose chatbots, and they're wonderful. And we look at them as, productivity enhancers, right? They let us do more, as opposed to replacing people. They just make everyone more efficient. I mean, I know I use generative AI every day to make me more efficient. But it doesn't do much more than that, and it definitely doesn't move you towards the agentic AI era where AI can actually take action unless you can give it access to the right mission critical data from within your enterprise. But on the flip side, if you go too far and you give AI unfettered access to data, that's where the concerns start to come in about security. What is the AI going to do with it outside of scope? There's been examples of prompt engineering and other places where if you train an AI model on data that you don't want to go outside your company, and then you expose that model in any particular way, say a chatbot, customer service, anything like that, no matter what guardrails you put on at the end, these LLMs fundamentally want to be helpful. Everything for them is a construct. Everything for them is about vectors. So if you give them the right prompt, they'll unveil their secrets. And so for us, it's fundamentally, how do you make AI productive? It's exposing it to the right data in your enterprise so they can truly give you unique insights without training it on anything that you don't want it to be trained on. And that's fundamentally what we focused on over the last year, is building out this AI data engine concept that can take your enterprise data, put all the right guardrails in place at the start, and transform it into data that's easily consumable by AI, by any AI application, just right out of the gate. And that's how we...
So, but Jeff, I think what you've described is the technical requirements for scaling AI adoption. But are we dealing with a people problem as well?
In what way specifically?
Change. People always resist change, has been my experience. Especially a change when you're hearing it's going to cost you, it's going to take your job eventually, and all of the kind of AI boogeyman stories we hear.
Yeah.
Do you think that, and I'm wondering if maybe you see this at NetApp or you see it with customers that you're dealing with, that there's a human kind of stiffening, if you will, or resistance to really adopting this at that scale?
Well, I'll say that in NetApp, I think we've had a broad adoption of AI internally. So I haven't seen that, but I certainly know what you're talking about. And I think it's true for any technical evolution, any sort of technical revolution. It was sort of the same thing with the cloud 10, 15 years ago, where there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of discussion in my industry and people that I worked with who said, oh, cloud is going to destroy data centers. It's going to take all of our jobs. We should fight it, right? And a lot of our competitors, quite frankly, said that as well. And what we said is, look, you can swim against the tide for only so long before you have to realize that if there is business value to be obtained, it's our job, it's your job, it's my job to find how to extract that business value. And I think it's, you can go back to the Industrial Revolution and say the Industrial Revolution cost a ton of jobs, right? A ton of agrarian jobs, other things like that, but it created whole new categories of jobs. And so that's really this movement towards knowledge workers, towards using human ingenuity so that our engineers, instead of spending a bunch of time on writing test cases or other things that don't require ingenuity, can have AI generate those so they can spend their time solving the hard problems. And I think that's, you don't study for years and years and years of computer science to go and wrote code over and over again, right? You study it so that you can think about it and truly solve unique problems. And that's fundamentally what we're seeing, is we're not reducing our number of engineers. We're not reducing the number of people who are, in the marketing team or other things like that. We're just saying, how can we do better? How can we do more? And how can we be, in our case, more informative using AI as a force multiplier? But, to your point, there's always going to be resistance to change. My kids are growing up in an AI era where it's very... if for me it was worries about using calculators in math class, for them it's worries about using ChatGPT in every class. And so there's going to be cultural change. There's going to be generational change. By the time my kids are in the workforce, AI will just be a tool like PowerPoint or like anything else we use to optimize getting along throughout the day. And so, heck, we wouldn't be doing this over Zoom, 10 years, 20 years ago, right? And today it's a vital productivity tool. And I think AI will be much the same.
maybe even bigger.
Even
So
bigger.
here's and continuing in that vein. If this isn't going to be huge, if this isn't going to be, game changing, should we be putting this kind of effort and emphasis and resources into it? So, but if it's not going to be, if it is going to be, we've got to be able to be ready for it. If it's not going to be, geez, we're wasting a lot of time and effort. What organization-wide impacts does a modern intelligent data infrastructure strategy have, let's say, short term and then maybe longer term?
Yeah, I think you're right to say that, right? In terms of how do we make reasonable investments so that we don't miss the wave, but we don't overinvest. And I think what we talk about with customers is really organizational best practices that they should be doing anyways. So when we talk about data storage or building out an intelligent data infrastructure for AI, it's not throw out everything you have. So we announced a new system, NetApp AFX, for example, which uses the exact same ONTAP software that tens of thousands of customers are already using, so that they can start to build out this AI infrastructure without having to reinvent everything that they're doing. And they can start to building governance and compliance and security and cyber resilience directly into that infrastructure so that all of their data is AI ready. And to be quite frank, even if they end up with only a tenth of the AI experiments they're thinking about, the fact that their data is still structured and ready and compliant is a boon in and of itself. In fact, you can look at AI as sort of an impetus to do what a lot of businesses may not have done anyways. It's kind of like spring cleaning, right? It's not much fun to clean out your garage and reorganize everything, but this gives you a reason to do it that ties into one of the major imperatives of our time. But regardless of how you end up using AI, the fact that all of your data is ready to be utilized, is unified, and is compliant is a gift in and of itself.
Agreed. I don't disagree with you there. Jeff, I know we're running on time. These things go quick. But we're just, I guess, what has it been, about a month since Insight now? 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Well, by the time people see this, it might be closer to a month. Lot of announcements, a lot of news coming out. We covered some of it at Futurum as part, Techstrong as being part of Futurum. Daniel Newman, of course, was there, and we had some of our other analysts there. But our audience probably hasn't seen a lot of that coverage for people who weren't there. In regard to this, can you share more about kind of some of the info or announcements that came out of Insight 2025 that has, bared on this subject?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple different announcements, and I kind of talked about a few of them. For AI, we announced this NetApp AFX, which is a enterprise-grade disaggregated architecture. It fundamentally takes everything that we've done for the last several decades in building this truly enterprise-grade, both from features and resiliency operating system, NetApp ONTAP, and extends it to being this massive exascale disaggregated architecture so that customers can, feed the GPU beast, right? As GPUs keep getting faster and they demand more and more throughput, AFX can scale and immediately was SuperPod certified by NVIDIA. So it can work across the largest AI clouds, as well as starting pretty small inside enterprises and growing to that scale. So that was a key part of it. And then the next part on top of that was the AI data engine, the NetApp AI data engine that I mentioned, which goes all the way from finding all your data across your data estate, both on-prem and in the cloud, builds a metadata catalog across all of that so that your data can easily be searchable by your data scientists, by your data engineers. They can create a curated data set that goes through compliance guardrails. So you can say, I want you to strip out any credit card numbers or any personally identifiable information or any HIPAA information, and then transforms it into a vector database that lives directly within your storage layer. So we can skip multiple different tools, multiple different steps, and have an embedded vector database that any AI application can use out of the gate. And so we think that combination of AFX plus AIDE was probably the biggest announcement coming out of Insight 2025 to really enable
Really?
that AI-ready data.
I love it.
And then the other ones, so around cyber resilience, the other thing we announced
Sure.
was this new NetApp ransomware resilience service. And so we actually have been the leaders, I think, in embedding all these security services directly into the data storage layer. We talk about ourselves as the most secure storage on the planet, and we back that up as being, the only one certified by the US government to store top secret data, and the only commercial storage available to do that. And we continue to evolve the zero trust principles. Back in the day, you thought, okay, well, I have my perimeter firewall, I'm all set. Now we operate on the assumption that any given data center, any given network is constantly breached because it's generally a safe assumption. And so we have to harden even down to the storage layer. So years ago, we built ransomware detection directly into NetApp ONTAP. So we have real-time ransomware attack detection built directly into where all your data is stored. And at Insight, we announced an expansion of that to also capture data breaches or data exfiltration, because we know most of the attacks that are happening today, they don't start with the ransomware, with the encryption attack. They start with copying all of your data, then they encrypt your data so they can double or triple extort you. So for us now, we can actually capture as the exfiltration is happening, so you can block that user before they get access to the majority of your data. And top of that, we built in an integrated isolated recovery environment so that if there is a malware attack, after we alert you to it, and you've got to do some basic cleaning, right? Say they get to 1%, 2% of your data estate, we can establish a clean room for you, find the latest known good copies of data, scan them to make sure there was no malware previously embedded in them, and then bring them back online for you, all as part of one integrated recovery process. And so that's the NetApp ransomware resilience service, kind of in a nutshell.
Excellent. It's funny, in the last couple of weeks, one day we had a report that ransomware is down. One day we had a report it's back up. It continues to be a thorn, more than a thorn. It continues to be a major pain for organizations all around. Anyway, hey, Jeff, we're about out of time. I wish we had more time to go over because there was more on Insight, but, people can go read that on the website, quite frankly.
Yeah,
but talking
absolutely.
about, this shift that we're all undergoing, right? It's different than the Solaris to Linux thing, right? This is just a whole different time warp. And it's going to be interesting how NetApp and companies out there, right, seize the moment and ride this wave. Anyway, thanks for coming on Techstrong TV. It's a pleasure to have you on here. Continued success. Keep it up. 18 years at the same company in the Valley is more than just, a little unusual. It's quite an accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Jeff Baxter, VP Product Marketing here at NetApp. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more at Techstrong TV.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Ingram Micro One. We're here with my new friend Eric talking about the relationship between Proofpoint and Ingram Micro and how that's kind of changing the way we transact business in the cybersecurity space. Buddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, one of the things that we do know about cybersecurity is it changes all the time. I mean, just when we think we've got one mole whacked, the next one comes up. How does the relationship between Ingram Micro and Proofpoint kind of help the providers and their customers at the end of that day kind of stay current and protect them from the threats we face?
Yeah, well, first I'll say that we celebrated our 10-year anniversary with our Proofpoint partnership this year. And it's been a very exciting partnership. I've been involved with it since we signed the contract 10 years ago. And we've certainly seen the strength of this partnership grow and grow. And so it's been a really exciting relationship for us. But, early last year, mid last year, we sat down together and just started having conversations about what can we do to free up the channel to respond faster to the threats that their clients are seeing. And this, where we are today is a result of just asking those simple questions.
It seems like what you guys are really doing is taking as much friction out of that process as we possibly can. And some of that may be using AI and other technologies. But what is the mission, and what are some of the things you're targeting to kind of make it easier to do business?
Yeah. Well, one of the things was for the commercial market segment, again, we wanted to empower the channel to act faster, right? So today, a channel partner has a net new opportunity. They can go to the Xvantage platform, new products, new solution bundles. They can select, the product that suits the needs to address the risk that that client is facing. And instead of waiting 3 days or as long as it takes to fly to the moon, right, they can submit this information in there and have an approved quote back in minutes, right? And that's a game changer, for the partner community.
Yeah. And that's critical because the end customer doesn't have a lot of tolerance for that process, right? Because they're sitting there saying, I can't really say to the end customer, let me get back to you in 3 days with that, and hopefully nothing bad happens.
Exactly right. Yeah, it is all about, speed to execution and helping them to respond to those threats faster than ever.
What went into the measurement side of this equation? So how are you tracking success? How are you looking at working with the partners? What's on the back end of this thing?
Well, I would say that there's been a lot of new, right? It's a new process. It's a new way to go to market with their channel organization. It's a new way to go to market with their commercial sellers. And this whole journey, this whole 10-year journey we've been on, our role has been to be an extension of their channel. And so for many, many years, we would talk about, I can do everything that a proof point channel account manager can do, but I can't approve special pricing. Well, now we can. And so there's been, like I said, new solution bundles like prime threat protection and others. And, for us to be able to bring that to market faster than ever, for a solution provider to sit down with a healthcare system and say, hey, I can turn a quote around for you while we're sitting here having a conversation. Those are the types of things, and pipeline continues to build for these commercial ready to go SKUs.
Out of curiosity, I noticed that you guys have invested in AI and around the sales agent, and you're taking historical data and market opportunities, correlating that and giving some advice to the partners. I think the partners are also building their own AI agents, or will eventually, into the purchasing cycle.
Right.
How do you think this whole ecosystem will evolve in time?
Well, that's what Sanjeev is here for, right? We got to see it firsthand. And, I think we're just in the infancy, right? When I think about, I've been at Ingram a very long time. I've been in the cyber practice for roughly 25 years. And I think where cyber was 20 so years ago was where we are with the maturity of AI right now. Meaning, you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of partners that are capable of selling cybersecurity, and our role there is to help them to go to market faster, to be more profitable, how they show up differently. As it relates to kind of all these things AI, we're in the very, very early stages of partners really formulating their AI strategy. And certainly, as you think about cybersecurity, the game is changing right in front of our eyes with AI too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where it's not just the good guys using it, the bad guys are using it just as much.
Which brings us to our next question. Are you starting to hear from the partners saying, hey, we think there's going to be a cybersecurity opportunity around AI, and what can you guys do to help us get there?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to being the extension of that channel, right? And I know, as an example, pretty much every cyber vendor out there, Proofpoint included, is using AI, right, to reduce the burden of, day-to-day security practitioners, and ultimately respond to these human-centric critical threats faster than ever. And so we'll continue to see that, right? So, yeah.
What metrics are you guys actually tracking? How do you measure success? How do you know what success is?
Well, I would just say, look, we work very closely together, and we work very closely with their commercial sales leader and Sherry Rhodes, who was here yesterday on stage, and we hold each other accountable for some very specific metrics. And I think we are definitely going in the right direction.
Of course, security requires a bunch of tools and solutions. There's no one size fits all. So how do you kind of work that with Proofpoint when you're trying to build a solution where there's multiple things involved? And how does that whole process get smoother because we're taking out the friction?
Yeah, Microsoft is a great example. They've got a good, integration and partnership with Microsoft, and we want to make sure that we're bringing the Proofpoint message to the Microsoft community and vice versa. And I think you'll see us continue to build out these things within the Xvantage platform as well. to make those recommendations. Hey, if you're picking up Office 365, are you thinking about Proofpoint's threat protection to augment that as an example? So I think there's probably more to come there.
We, of course, have had the notion of customer relationship management forever and a day, but there's also vendor relationship management, right?
Yeah.
Is that becoming a discipline in its own right and a thing that you and the partners are kind of working through? But it seems like this too can be a set of best practices.
Absolutely. And, there are other vendors that each have their own specific channel initiatives that they're trying to accomplish. And, just thinking back, how this went with Proofpoint was, it was a design thinking session. What are you trying to accomplish and how do we go build something unique together? And that's what we've done. Now, every vendor, has a different strategy or slightly different, but I think this is just the starting point for, how to capitalize on this platform to go drive meaningful results and ultimately to empower the biggest sales force there is, which is the channel.
True that. So Proofpoint partners have a lot of choices when they want to go get something. So if you were talking to them right now, what would you tell them about why Ingram to work with Proofpoint versus anywhere else?
Yeah, well, it's, the platform is important, but it's also the people. And I think we've done a very good job with our people, again, acting as an extension of that Proofpoint team better than anybody. And the relationships that we have with the solution providers and those partnerships are super important. And at the end of the day, people buy from people they like. The platform makes it easier to spend more time having discussions about the right threat protection. And so, we continue to get feedback and learn, right? There's more enhancements coming. As you start on a journey like this, you don't know all the answers. And we listen to our partners and they say, hey, have you thought about this? So we're launching deal registration as an example that will be all there and instantly available on the Xvantage platform. I think from there, we start thinking about, hey, what lifecycle services do we start doing? How do we help educate the channel on what new solutions should we be upselling as we go down this journey together? So I think the sky's the limit.
I think one of the other things I've seen you do is invest more in your own cybersecurity professional services team that has the partners back.
Yep.
Is that too going to become something that I can maybe call on a moment's notice, just like the transaction?
Absolutely, yeah. And we're already doing some of those services specific with Proofpoint and others. But, I've always said that, there are thousands of cybersecurity partners in the United States, right? Our role is to help the partners buying from Ingram to be more profitable and proactive. And one way we can do that is by injecting services capability to make them look like they're the top security practitioner in the country. And they can do that with Ingram Micro.
So we used to have this line between what we called resellers and managed service providers, but if everybody's leaning on you a little bit for the services, eventually all the partners kind of evolve into service providers.
Yeah, said another way, right? I mean, services, you're going to build it, you're going to buy it, or you're going to partner. Right. And so we want to be that partner that, even if we're not the one delivering some of those services, although we've built it out for Proofpoint, they can tap another partner on the shoulder to deliver, whatever services they need, or perhaps it's in a adjacent part of the cybersecurity landscape. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the challenges that we hear is, and there's been a lot of talk here at the show about this notion of focusing more on business outcomes. But in security, you're kind of trying to prove a negative that something didn't happen. So therefore, how do I kind of measure that or convince somebody of the value of that? So how are the partners kind of measuring the value of their services and how are you helping them figure that out?
Well, I mean, there's only one right answer, right? You're going to get breached or you're not. But I think, it has to be more of an outcome discussion and not about a point product, right? What are the critical risks that you need to solve for today? Are they using assessments to truly understand what those risks are? And then you kind of map it back to what outcome a technology or a multi-solution technology stack can go deliver.
Somebody once told me being in security is kind of like being in the Army. It's long moments of sheer boredom followed by a few seconds of sheer terror. So when there is a crisis and there is an incident, how do you kind of work with the partners to ring that alarm bell and kind of get all hands on deck? And because they're going to call you.
Well, I don't know about that because I don't know that hopefully they're not calling us because we've provided them with the right tools. But, it's a fascinating industry. It's been one that's fun to watch. It makes the headline news pretty much every day with another mass scale breach. You just hope that it's not your day, right? So But yeah.
Well, to a certain degree, we've probably all been breached. It's just a question of when we figure it out.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And to that point, it does feel like the nature of the game has changed a little bit. It's not just like how many breaches did I stop, but it's on the assumption that we all know that we have been breached somewhere, and when it goes active, I think the measurement that people are looking at from the end customer side to the partner is saying, how long does it take you to respond to that and close that gap? And for that, I need to have this whole ecosystem in place, right?
Right, exactly right. And I mean, even like if you think about the cybersecurity insurance industry, right? We're not an insurance broker, but we have partners that can go and help a client to understand not only when you need cybersecurity insurance, but what kind of remediation can you have on retainer, right? And ultimately, what solutions do you need to buy to reduce the amount of that premium that you're paying? Right? So you have to follow the NIST framework as an example and make sure you've got a well-architected security defense. And then, when the catastrophe happens, how quickly can you respond?
You mentioned the insurance industry, and it seems like they are shifting more end customers towards consuming managed security services as a result. So have you seen the partners kind of shift the balance of their portfolio?
I think they have to, right? And ultimately, if you're having a comprehensive discussion with a client, cyber insurance has to be part of it, right? And so you've got to have the right partners to make that happen, but you also have to help them reduce their premiums. And so, yeah, that's all part of the whole integrated ecosystem.
Is there something that you see the partners doing today that you would advise them to maybe tweak or change to be more efficient? Is there something on their side that you look at and you go, hey guys, if this one little thing would change, the world would be a little bit better place?
Well, I don't know if I'm answering this directly, but I've been at Ingram a long time, and we talk to partners about all the services and all the things that we can do to help them. And without going through a laundry list of 9,000 things, I think it's just simply put, which is if you have an area of need and you don't know where to go to Ingram first. There was a guy on main stage with Paul yesterday, and his quote was up there. I wish I remembered what it said, but it was like, if I don't know what to do, I Ingram it, which means I'm going to go to Ingram and I'm going to find the right answer to help, whatever I'm trying to solve for my client.
To your point about that, one of the issues I hear a lot about is there's just a lot of SKUs to navigate, and they get confused and it becomes overwhelming. So are you guys thinking about anything maybe with Proofpoint or somebody else to reduce those numbers?
That's exactly what was done, which is creating these solution bundles that are designed to stop human-centric threats. Whether you need, obviously there's email security and threat prevention and all these things, but you choose the package that you feel is going to best suit that client. And so that's what we've done, is create very priced to the market and ready to go and ready to solve those critical risks.
All right. We are close to the end of the year. What are you most excited about going into 2026?
Thanksgiving? Oh, no. I love turning the calendar. I love building the plans for next year. And I think we've got some exciting growth opportunities, here in our future with Proofpoint and others. And so it's an exciting time. You got to close the year strong, but I really enjoy the planning season and getting ready for next year and setting lofty goals that we're going to go hit.
All right. Hey, folks, you heard it here. A good mantra for the coming year, if you're a Proofpoint partner, eliminate the friction. Hey, buddy, thanks for being here.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And we'll be back in a minute. Hey everybody, we're at Ingram Micro One and we're talking about innovation in the channel with my new friend Hope here. Hope, welcome to the United States. Hope's from Australia. It's a very competitive marketplace in Australia. What are the challenges that you're dealing with?
I think many of our MSPs are facing a number of challenges in the Australian market, which is highly competitive, as you've mentioned. I think one of the areas that a lot of our MSPs are really struggling with is profitability. A recent study suggested that 95% of MSPs in Australia have listed profitability as their number one concern moving into 2026. I think one of the other areas of concern is the skills shortage that we face in Australia, particularly in the areas of cybersecurity, cloud and AI. So our partners are having to invest in upskilling their existing teams or invest in capability, which is very expensive and difficult to find. And I think the third area where a lot of our partners are really facing challenges is our market is highly complex. Our ecosystem, which was once linear, is now evolving rapidly, and it's a 360 ecosystem. So we're seeing far more complexity around licensing models, multi-cloud, multiple vendor solutions, and end customers really expecting higher return on investment and strategic advisory services from our partner community.
So given all that, what distinguishes the MSPs who are succeeding in that marketplace?
We've got a number of MSPs that are also thriving despite the competitive challenges and the headwinds that they're facing in the market. Where we see our MSPs with a very clear value proposition that they've defined and they can execute against, we're seeing them have a great deal of success. Where we're seeing MSPs aligned to business outcomes and solving business challenges, we're also seeing a great deal of success with our MSPs.
On the other side of that coin is the ones who are maybe struggling a little bit. What do you see them doing that maybe they should be thinking about fixing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the lack of clarity on the value proposition is hard. I think customers, MSPs that are struggling with that complexity and not really able to navigate that are finding the market difficult to navigate, and the high degree of competition. So really being able to understand where you add value, where you play, whether that's niche or more broadly, but really sticking to your capabilities and then expanding upon them within your accounts, I think is a big challenge for many of our partners.
Given those issues, one of the things we talk about at the show a lot is business outcomes and focusing on those business outcomes, and that's a lot more than just providing an IT service per se. What are customers looking for from you? Is that changing? Are the expectations changing?
Absolutely. I think as the market becomes even more complex, I think our role as distribution needs to evolve with the changing needs of our partner and vendor community. My team and I recently this year traveled all around the country, and our Exec Connect series, we spoke to 500 C-levels within our partner community to really understand what the challenges are that they're facing, where they see the opportunity, and to really lean into areas where we feel Ingram Micro can help support their growth. I think that where we're focused is really around making sure that we're investing in the areas of opportunity to support our partners. I mentioned the skill shortage issue. We've really invested heavily in some of those areas to ensure that our partners can leverage our skill set and our capabilities to not have to invest in that headcount themselves and to really leverage our expertise. So I think that's one area where we're really supporting our partners to be successful. Another area of huge focus for us is on enablement. So making sure that our partners and their teams are enabled around what's currently moving, the solutions and stacks that are really accelerating, but also future-proofing them around AI. We recently launched in Australia Enable AI, where we're able to provide assessments for our partners, development tracks for our partners to help them capitalize on the AI opportunity that's currently accelerating in market, although a little bit slower than the rest of the world in Australia, but certainly a big mover in the next 2 years.
How are the partners themselves going to evolve along that part of the conversation? Are they changing their business models a little bit? Are they getting a little more nuanced about how they deliver something in terms of cost structure? I mean, walk that through to the final equation.
I think we're all looking for operational efficiencies. We're all looking for productivity gains. I think us at Ingram Micro ourselves through our Xvantage platform is really leading the way there. It's all about how do we remove operational friction and how do we free up ourselves and our partners and our vendors to do more and sell more and grow more. So I think we are playing a pivotal role in helping our partners evolve their own operating models to be more platform orientated, to be more digital in nature, so that we can do more for less, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And following up on the skills conversation a little bit and your professional services, do the partners need to get savvier about who they hire full-time versus what they're leaning on from a distributor partner like yourself? And it seems like the model's a little more fluid.
I would say it is a little more fluid, and I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think that you could have partners, for example, who have got a huge amount of PS capability, professional services capability, whose talent bench may be fully utilized. And so they need capacity, and that's where they can lean on distribution to do that. We have other instances where we have partners who maybe haven't got that skill set right now from a PS perspective around AI, and they can leverage our skill set and our capability, not just locally, but also globally, to help augment their capability and give them access to opportunities that perhaps they haven't got the skill set to access today.
We started talking about how competitive the marketplace is, but are the partners working with each other? Are they trying to leverage up a little bit, not just Ingram, but each other? And that's being facilitated through you guys.
Absolutely. So TrustX Alliance is a global program where we essentially bring together 150 plus partners into a shared community or ecosystem where knowledge is shared, ideas are born and ideated, and that shared knowledge is what makes our ecosystem stronger, and we facilitate that. I'm really proud that actually at Ingram One this year we've launched our own Australian Trust X, so we're part of the global community now, and it's really born for the reason allowing our partners to share ideas, cross-pollinate, leverage each other's skill sets and strengths to do more together. And I think that's a really powerful role that distribution can play.
We talked about the skills gap a little bit, but are there particular skills and areas where you're seeing partners need more expertise than others? Or it seems to me there's a lot of emerging technologies these days. I might not have anybody who knows anything about those things, but where's the pressure?
Yeah, I think beside profitability, there was a Canalys study that was recently done that indicated that the skills shortage was also one or two top priority of concern for partners in the Australian, APAC and even global ecosystem today. So I think where we're seeing partners struggle is around those technology stacks that are really accelerating. So cybersecurity, cloud modernization, AI, they're really the areas where partners are struggling to fill some of those skills. The shortage of talent, particularly in Australia, is exceptionally high. The cost to get that resource into the business is extremely high, and they're all looking to do more with less. So it's a little bit of a conundrum that I think many of our partners are facing today.
Mm-hmm. And the type of people you're looking for if you're a partner are kind of a little bit different than if I'm just an internal IT organization where I'm looking to hire somebody, because they have to have some nice ability to have a good experience with a customer, right? That requires a lot of patience, which is usually the first attribute. But what kind of folks are you guys looking for, and are there things that you and Ingram are doing to kind of coach and train people to become more suitable for being in a professional services role in a partner organization?
Yeah, so I often say we're looking for unicorns because the skill set is actually really hard to find. So you're looking for higher levels of technical competence, but you're also looking for people that have an element of charisma and a sales bent to how they engage with customers as well. So being able to be technically competent, but also be able to communicate with partners around business outcomes and partners' customers around business outcomes, I think is critically important to the success of people in those roles. We do a lot of work with the technical community at Ingram Micro around enablement, sales enablement and technical enablement to really ensure that our partners' resources are equipped to be able to go out and successfully manage end user environments.
Mm-hmm. Are you doing anything with the local universities or colleges that help maybe expand the bench a little bit?
We are actually. So we have a relationship with a university in Queensland that we work closely with to really help develop, nurture and foster talent coming out of their cybersecurity university courses. And we incubate that talent into our own organisation, but also expand that into our partner base so that our partners can identify talent early and bring them into their own organisations as well.
Now, we're here at the show, so I've had the benefit of walking around, but people are talking about X Advantage and growth tracks. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so we launched Enable AI in Australia in July, August of this year, and it's really about enabling our partners to assess their own skills, understand where they are from a skills perspective on their AI journey, benchmark themselves against other similar partners to understand their readiness, and then for us to build growth tracks bespoke to those partners that help them enable and accelerate their AI capabilities so that they can capture that market opportunity. So we're well on the way there. We have 25 partners in Australia already that have started that journey. I think really interestingly also with Enable AI is the number of use cases by vertical that partners can pull down and learn from, but also use to position with their end users to capitalize on AI opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that the self-assessments that people are taking are, shall I say, valid? Because, I mean, I know I have a very grandiose opinion of my own capabilities, but it's probably not realistic. So how do you make sure the partners kind of, answer those questions in a way that are truthful?
In Australia, I think culturally we're very hard markers and we're very critical of ourselves and others. So I feel as though that the partners probably do a fairly good job of assessing themselves. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be honest in that process in order to maximize the opportunity and the enablement tracks that we have. So I do think that the partners are fairly good critics of themselves, and they know that to really make sure they can leverage that program, they have to do an honest self-assessment so that we can help them appropriately.
Talent is everything in this business. What's your advice to the partners to make their organization like the most attractive place where the best talent wants to work?
I think it's really important that we nurture our people. I think being a people-first organisation is super important. You hear Paul Bay talk about it all the time, and we live it. It's in our DNA at Ingram that we're customer and people obsessed, and we put our people and our customers first. And I think if you can provide that in an organisation, I think you become quite sticky, and I think you get a lot of loyalty. Your attrition drops, and it's somewhere people want to stay. I think providing people with the opportunity to learn and to grow and to adapt to what's happening in our market, but enable them to be ready for what's next as well, I think is critically important. So I think investing in people, being a culture that people are inspired to be in each and every day and to feel purposeful about their work. I think if you can do those things, it's easier said than done. I think you're able to retain top talent and attract top talent, which is super important for us in this industry.
Do you think that it's important for the folks that run the organization to exhibit this one attribute that I think is important, but they seem to be always have an appetite for continuously learning. They're constantly curious. And one of the things you walk around the show floor, everybody here is kind of checking out the latest and the greatest. And I cannot help but wonder if that's like one of the core attributes that is overlooked about success in the channel, is that everybody in it seems to be fundamentally curious and always learning.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes our industry amazing. That's why I've been in the industry 25 years, and I can't imagine being anywhere else. I mean, the transformation in this industry, from the birth of the internet to cloud to AI, to cyber, it's constantly evolving, and you have to remain curious, and you have to be willing to challenge the status quo, and you have to be willing to expand your mind beyond what you ever thought was possible. And I think that's the beauty of working in this industry. And I think I'm very lucky to be surrounded by partners and vendors who are always curious, always evolving, always ideating and innovating. And I think that's what keeps us young, maybe not biologically young, but mentally young, and really, keeps us all super interested and committed to the ecosystem that we operate in.
Keeps us young and second part stressed. So it's an interesting combination.
And grey.
There you go. So, as we've mentioned, you're from Australia, but we're here in Dece, or just outside of Dece, and there's a lot of international cooperation. Globalization is still a trend. I mean, there's a lot of issues in the world, but still people are doing business across countries. How is that playing out in Australia? Are you partnering more with people from overseas? Are you seeing more of that? And what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So globalization's absolutely impacting the Australian market. And I think you can look at that positively or negatively depending on how you frame that challenge. So I think for many of our partners, it means that the competitive landscape has become heightened because we're now not just competing locally, we're competing globally. I think on the flip side, what that presents is an opportunity, however, for partners who are looking to expand into other geographies and locations. And I think Ingram Micro Australia is very, very well placed to be able to support our partners to tap into the globalization opportunity. We're a local distributor with massive global presence and the backing of a very large global organisation. We can scale into 57 countries with our partners out of Australia. So I think for us, it's more of an opportunity collectively to harness that growth that we see in other parts of the world and in emerging markets. We're a very mature market in Australia. Organic growth is hard to find, and I think geographic expansion is critical for our success and our partners' success.
All right, folks. Hey, if you are looking to partner with folks in Australia, find Hope. Yeah. She knows everybody. Yeah. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
As an introduction, I run cloud products within IKU. So any workload that touches any three hyperscalers, I have portfolio coverage over. And I'm in year 2 at Haiku as well. I'm from the world of protecting Kubernetes and a lot of the infrastructure elements that power AI today as well. I know very often when people talk about AI, there is a lot of importance given to the shovels, the GPUs, the models, but not a lot of conversations happen on the data that actually drives the intelligence for AI, right? So our goal today is to kind of explore, how data protection needs to evolve in the age of AI, and how do we protect the data sets that are being generated both by AI and for AI these days, right? And also all the infrastructure that gets put in place to make AI possible for a lot of the organizations. and how today cloud is the default delivery model for a lot of AI in many organizations. So as we talked about, let's start with cloud. I call it the home of AI these days, right? This is where very often people start when they start their AI initiatives. Cloud providers have more access to GPUs than an average enterprise in the market, and you get the bursty compute you need for a lot of the model work that you are doing within the organizations, right? So cloud has become the home of AI. But with cloud, there is a whole bunch of problems that exist when it comes to data protection, right? We call them the silent killers. We call them the lifestyle diseases with this data set, right? You have too many applications. You have too many as a service elements that are kind of put together to drive your pipeline. And that creates a lot of the console chaos. You have to use multiple consoles to manage, what's happening with your pipeline, right? And that also creates a lot of API and automation sprawl. And the other part of it, there is a lot of data being generated, but there is not a lot of efficiency built into the cloud. And again, cloud isn't compensated for driving a whole bunch of efficiency in terms of how you store that data, right? So we're also seeing that there is this obesity when it comes to the amount of data that you're storing, within your infrastructure and within your tenants. And despite all of this, there are still blind spots when it comes to AI and AI services. There is a large number of services being built in all of these cloud providers to make AI possible, but the data protection vendors haven't really kept up with all that data set. And even being able to serve that data back to the customer in an AI-friendly fashion, that's not really possible today with a lot of the solutions and what we're looking to solve with Haiku. What you
Satya?
Yeah.
Hi, Guy Courier with Futurum here. Can you talk a little bit more about this first one, fragmentation? One of the big drivers, I think, towards data lakes has to do with avoiding this by just having a simple way to throw everything in a single bucket. And that alone, I feel like a sort of typical data lake or data lakehouse vendor would say that solves this, because that provides you with a single console. Maybe it creates the challenge of all the chaos having to be reached out to pull everything in. But how would you respond to that?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And in a couple of 2 or 3 slides down the road, we actually walk you through what a typical stack looks like.
I knew that actually, so please continue.
Right. So in what you do see is the lake houses, which we'll spend a lot of time today talking about, are becoming the unified platform in many ways, right? It is doing more and more unification. It's multimodal, it's versatile. You can do both, optimize for both storage and analytics. All of that is true, but it is not true that today's data pipeline stores primarily in those workloads. It is, again, even if it is primarily, you need to preserve meaning when you're protecting AI data sets. There is a lot of data that sits around these data lake houses that needs to be protected as well to protect your full infrastructure. Again, great question, and thank you for that. In a couple of slides, we'll actually show you what a sample AI data stack looks like and why that kind of coverage and for that fragmented workload matters.
Well, in my opinion, I'm actually following with my fellow delegate, Keith Townsend here, his guidance on this. It also does create a problem of its own because of data gravity. The more you collect data, however processed or managed in one place, the stickier it can be there. Even that really hasn't been solved.
Yeah, the good thing is, as we are in the world of providing insurance for that data, right? And when data gravity shifts, it's our job and responsibility to kind of shift along with that and build our applications to make sure that data gets protected. And I think we are seeing that with the cloud, where the object storage is perhaps now the landing spot for a lot of the data sets, and the lake houses are the new systems of records. So between object storage and lake houses, you're seeing more and more data sets kind of landing in the cloud. And that means more and more applications and the processes and those things will also have to be built in the cloud because again, the data is going to pull you where the data is, right? And we certainly see that, and why we think cloud is the new home of, I mean, it's not the new home, it is the home of AI, because again, lots of customers' data is being stored in those lake houses and object storage in general, right? And talking about cloud, one of the things that Haiku is really, really good at is this coverage. And we talk about insurance industry and data insurance industry. Everybody knows coverage is currency for us, right? How many workloads can you protect? And I'm using, I mean, each of these cloud providers is now offering over 100 to 200 services for a variety of things that the customer wants to do. How do you keep up with these growing set of diversification of your data sets? What used to be within four walls of your data center is now just spread everywhere, right? And how do you protect your data sets in this context? And one of the things IQ is really good at is the coverage matrix. We have protect over 90 plus workloads today, and we already have the broadest coverage when it comes to cloud in terms of the number of workloads we protect in the cloud, right? And so let's talk about how AI changes the game a bit in the cloud, and how a lot of our strengths kind of carry over in this context. As you know, AI is not just, I mean, this delegate clearly knows that AI is not just about ChatGPT and your interactions with the chat platform, right? And there is so much that is happening in the back end when it comes to what an AI effort entails in an organization. You start with, ingesting training data sets and actually creating training data sets. One of the things that we're learning is there is a huge increase in spike in storage and storage around data lake houses as well as object storage, because everybody's creating one additional copy of all their data sets to kind of feed AI to drive those insights, right? People didn't have a centralized repository of all their data sets in one place. Now AI is kind of pushing you to create that set of training data sets, right? But raw data set doesn't actually get the job done, or doesn't doesn't optimize for those model training. You do have to enrich the data and make the data look, friendly to AI so that it's easier for AI to ingest. There's a lot of enrichment that happens. And then you go through training, it's multiple runs. And at each point, you're creating weights, you're creating logs, you create a lot of the tunability that happens in that case. And then you finally kind of serve that to your users. And then there is a full feedback loop in terms of just making that, again, part of what you learn from in general. The key thing to note is this is AI implementation in a lot of organization is a relay race, right? The baton gets passed from one to another to actually drive the outcomes you need in the organization. And if losing the baton once, in this relay race, you kind of break the traceability in AI or the trust in AI. And this is really where the challenge is when it comes to data protection. If you don't follow this relay race and ensure the baton gets passed around from one to the other, and you're fully capturing that particular race, you're not really in the race in that context, right?
So the quick question on, because there's several, this is Keith Townsend, the advisory bench. There's several challenges around data protection as you hand off from one process to another. And the challenge is not just protecting the data, but the transformation. So let's, focus on a RAG process that ingests the data, however we're getting it. And then we go to enrich the data for AI, whether that's serving up via inference or we're serving it up for training. A lot of the mistakes happen at this level, and the visibility of being able to trace back the issue and revert back to state is a legitimate challenge. Are you guys helping with that problem, or just the ability to recover the underlying data set?
Yeah, look, for each of those service, like for example, if you are storing your vector databases uh, in AlloyDB as an example in Google Cloud, right? What we do have is the ability to capture that state, kind of bring that back to the state. One of your model runs amok, and it's not the data set you want, and a lot of filtering happens in again AI model training as well. You have a data set that is potentially poisoned, right? In all of those cases, we do allow you to kind of bring back to a state where your previous models ran from potentially, right? So we make that possible to be able to restore back to an earlier state. But a lot of the times, it's also about restoring the data in a format that AI itself can understand as well. So it's about being able to bring back the states, but also being able to produce that data back for future analysis to see if there was a problem with it, right?
Yeah. So for a case in point, like if I'm enriching the data with JSON so that it's better injected into my data pipeline for my vector database process, what happens 2 or 3 revisions down the line, I discovered that a edit that I made to the JSON structure actually broke something else, and reverting back to that clean state is not simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Schema drift, pipeline corruption, all of these are legit problems. And the good thing about IQ is you can go back to an earlier state, but you can also produce an offline copy of the data you already had so that you can understand what went wrong. So both those elements are supported and enabled through Haiku.
So Satya, this is Ray Lucchese, Silverton Consulting. Do you plug into the checkpointing process during training? Data protection historically has been driven on a time basis or a change basis or something like that. I'm just trying to figure out where you play in training checkpointing.
Yeah, it's not so much that we plug into checkpoints, but it is a natural point for you to take your backups, right? A checkpoint is usually integrating with your backup application to make sure that, hey, I have this model checkpoint. I've stored all the, sampling weights and all of my metrics around my model implementation that's been stored in the registry. And that is a perfect time to kick off a backup so that you have, all the data up until the checkpoint. So whether you're rewriting your models as a new run, or whether you're taking a checkpoint to make sure that, I have this state captured, that's when they plug in with backup solution to make sure all these services that make the checkpoint protected as well.
So if I have, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, that's just if I have a custom data pipeline, just as long as you're storing the metadata that I need to do the recovery that I need, and you're working with a sophisticated group, this is different than enterprise IT backup. This is usually someone working specifically with data pipeline, and they're going to have specific requirements around how they recover and what they're recovering within the data. So it'll be interesting on the kind of the brick level, what I'm able to recover in this environment versus what I'd be traditionally looking at in Haiku's traditional type of customer.
So just to jump in here, this is Dave Graham from Memo Commons. So what moved to asynchronous checkpointing, where the entirety of your workflow is driven, in a different direction, where checkpoints aren't just fixed points in time anymore. There's something that is streamed. How does this obviate some of what you were talking about? Because there is no return to zero anymore. There is an ongoing process. You're ongoing, and you're flowing through these models and through these training epochs in a different sort of way. So your return to zero, your return to a known good becomes
last best state.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit more ephemeral than it ever was before, right? So I think it was Carl that might have brought it up before, but you can act on a checkpoint file, 80 gigs plus whatever, or whatever dump comes out of that. But how are you integrating above that stack then into the command and control center of that training system, or whatever ends up being used, whether it be CUDA or otherwise?
Metadata to control where you were left off and stuff like that?
This becomes the Hydra problem, right? There's so many different aspects of things that you would want to control. because a lot of those checkpoint files are just there. It's garbage anyway in the end, right? It's just there for, cover your ass type moments, right? The metadata ends up becoming the driving point. Yeah, you want to make sure you maintain that. So anyway,
Yeah, so from a practical problem, I've run into this. So I've transformed my data, but I need to recover not the entire state. Your comment of returning to zero. I'm not trying to return to zero. I want to save the work that I've done up to this point and return a portion of my data pipeline to its original or to a different version of the state. I don't know how to solve that problem. If you guys are solving the problem, that is really interesting.
well, if you have an entire NVL 72 that's chunking away at this stuff, you're going to return to a known good state. You're going to now have to pull 72 GPUs back to a known good state to recalculate that epoch, right? That's a big lift if you're going to try to do that. So consistency wise, again, and it's not, I think the idea here is noble. Absolutely. I'm more curious to like, how do you now embed yourself into a process that is literally changing week on week as we discuss these technologies?
Yeah, and what's really cool to hear is, I mean, what you are talking about in terms of being able to go back to last good state and so on. I mean, this is what backup vendors have been doing for years for any data set, right? Any data set that we protect is always changing. Any data set that we recover is because we need to go back to a known good spot in majority of the cases, whether it's because of disaster, whether it's because of cyber attacks, whatever the reason may be, we go back. In this case, it's because of experimentation, right? So at the end of the day, we capture state and we allow you to go back to state. And when it comes to capturing state, we'll also talk about how you capture that state in a more consistent fashion. And that's also things that we're investing in and have actually built some patent pending technology around how do you drive consistency among the data sets that you're actually protecting, so that when you come back, it's not going to look at the data set that just came back as, hey, what is this that I don't recognize, right? You need to be able to put back and expect things to run normally. And there is a lot of work to be done. We're not saying that we've solved every problem there, but we have solved some problems that are, very key, and we'll walk you through those consistency element as well when we go through the solution in more detail, right? So again, the point is lots of living data sets.
Yeah.
So lots of living data sets being produced. And again, those data sets need to be protected. You drop the baton once, you kind of lose a lot of the traceability and trust, that AI generates. You don't want to be producing results later saying, hey, we don't know why my models behave the way they behave. You need to be able to, again, trace back and say what actually happened. To an earlier question that came up, let's take the example of a customer building an AI pipeline in Google Cloud, right? You start with a workbench that has direct integration into GitHub and BigQuery and so on. You deal with your training data sets. You create your feature data sets where your digital twins are stored. You create prediction data sets with both what you send inside and what it comes out of it. And you generate a lot of model artifacts in Vertex AI pipelines, right? So what you see is data set is crawled across multiple services. People use the best of breed solutions for each of this data set. Yes, you are going to see BigQuery, which is the lakehouse platform that Google has, right? You see this in multiple columns. And to an earlier comment, yes, lakehouses are becoming that unified central platform, and we're really happy about it. But you're also seeing that it's not the only platform people use. At the end of the day, BigQuery can't be your workbench. BigQuery can't be where you store your source codes. And it is not the best platform for real-time insights or feature data in general. So there is a lot of cloud elements that customers use to be able to create an AI pipeline. And what we are doing is to ensure protection across all of these services with Haiku, so that more and more of your AI infrastructure is covered, protected, and you have confidence in those capabilities, right? So, and that's why this graph where we talk about all of our coverage matters because you want to be able to capture everything from VMs, which could be your workbenches, all the way to vector embeddings, right? So all of that data needs to be protected, and why our coverage really matters in this context, right? And let's talk lake houses, right? And again, glad that group is already tuned in and kind of see this change happening like we see it as well. Lake houses, I like to call this, they are kind of bringing together AI, BI, and what I call CI, right? The continuous insight for an organization, right? So the lake houses are becoming the new system of record, and it is growing at a phenomenal pace in customer organization. We've worked with customers, who said they have a near 100% growth year over year on some of their lakehouse data sets. And these are not 100% growth when they are 70 GB. They are 100% growth when they are at 700 terabytes, right? They're talking about a massive growth even at scale. And why you're seeing lakehouse platforms like BigQuery and Databricks and Snowflake, each multi-billion-dollar businesses, they're all around, $3 to $5 billion businesses on their own, but each of them growing at nearly 50% year over year. They're creating a nearly a $2 billion business every year and kind of adding to their balance sheet at this point. And that's because, again, customers are adopting lake houses, that single unified platform where they can store all this data set, right? And as we talked about, that creates gravity. When more and more data set lands in a specific platform, you start building solutions that protect that particular platform, that deals well with that particular platform, and integrates first-party integration into some of these lakehouse architectures with a lot of solutions that are built around these data sets, right?
Sanjay, can I interrupt and ask you a question on this?
Yeah, please do.
So from your customer interaction, Scott Robon with Solutional, it seems like there's a spread of very mature customers who are really disciplined and have gravity in one place, but a very long tail and continuum of customers that don't, and maybe will never need to. Where do you work best on that spectrum? Because like when you say lake house, it's like, well, I have a place at the lake, but I also have a place at the beach, and I've got a place in the mountains where there's streams, not lakes or oceans. And I think that's more a real representation of where many enterprises are today.
Yeah, in your truth, the workload, the customer environments are often on both ends of the spectrum, right? You have a very long tail in this curve. You have a whole bunch of customers who have data sets that are kind of spread everywhere, and you've got a lot of customers who are also going through consolidation of all that data set into a single platform so they can drive outcomes, their AI outcomes, a lot faster, right? And the good thing about our solution is that we were already built for the customers that had data everywhere,
okay,
right? We had 90 plus workloads already supported, right? Whether you keep your CRM data in Salesforce and GitHub data, your source codes in GitHub, and your databases in Cloud SQL, it didn't really matter. We provided support for all of those workloads individually through a platform What we are seeing now is not just a group of customers that have data everywhere, but also a group of customers who are consolidating and creating these massive data sets that are feeding into AI. And that's the journey we're seeing. And we want to be there to support those customers who are doing that on this front as well, because these are workloads that have not historically been talked about in the context of data protection, right? Backup vendors didn't talk about BigQuery. Backup vendors didn't talk about Databricks, and still don't. And we're seeing that shift and are adapting our solutions to kind of become the best in breed for those workloads as well.
Okay.
Okay. And the thing that I also want to highlight is, this data set is yes, it's special. It can handle scale, but there is also potential for data loss in this context. We talked about a couple of scenarios already. I think Keith mentioned, hey, I could have a corrupted JSON file completely screwing up my models, and that's certainly possible. Schema drift is a consistent problem where models break. You can also have poison data sets. I mean, the first thing I hear from cloud vendors when they talk about these, BigQuery and Databricks and so on, they say, hey, there is no, we don't give you access to a compute. Somebody can't just come in and run, corrupt your data set there. But what you do give is access to APIs. And with those APIs, you could poison data sets that your models are being trained on. And that could be the face of AI in this model. But whatever is the issue, we do need to understand that any data, any service has chances of going wrong. You could lose them, and you want to have the ability to go back and protect them. And that's one of the key elements to really think through. Again, our job is to kind of follow where the data is going. We're seeing that the data is going to these lake houses and object storage, predominantly in the context of AI. And we want to make sure that we have the best in class solution. So you could get back those data sets if you ever need for whatever reason that is.
Just saying you should update that last to include Amazon. Because US East going down is kind of legendary at this point. Might as well make them notice.
Yeah, and look, I think pointing that out is a little bit of like ambulance chasing as well. But in this context, and absolutely, and we'll talk about why that problem also is permeated across all these enterprises, is because AI is the cloud is the home of AI, but cloud is also puts a lot of people under house arrest, right? And people don't really have a way to create that cross cloud resilience across these data sets. So yes, it's your home, but you're also under arrest to some extent, and that again needs to change. And you'll see that we have some solutions that helps provide that cross cloud resilience and shareability of data set from one cloud provider to another as well. This is just to show that data recreation, if you lost your data sets, is very expensive. Yes, it's possible. It's possible in some cases. I'll explain a scenario where it's not possible. But generally, when it's possible, if you had infinite time, infinite resources, and infinite APIs, of course, you can build a lot of that data set back. Very often, what sits in lake houses is your second copy of a data set. It's already sitting someplace else, and you need to transform that and store that in a lake house before you feed it to AI. So one of the reasons people don't think about backups immediately. But what we're also seeing is these lake houses are really good at streaming data, right? And customers are feeding, whether it's for sentimental analysis based on Twitter messages, right, or any social media messages that may be, or AI, I mean, IoT data sets and sensor data sets that are coming in from multiple places. Those data sets are getting streamed directly into these lake houses. So it's your only copy of data sets there. And if you lose them, the sensor is not going to regenerate those information for you. And Twitter is not going to give you back all of those old tweets without charging you for, a spike in API usage, right? I think at this point, what they charge almost 500K a year to search through and collect about 50,000 tweets. And that's the kind of plan you're going to be paying for in Salesforce as well. Right? So what we deliver to this ecosystem, we talked about why it's important. We talked about what it would cost to bring back the data set if you didn't have a reliable mechanism. And now I want to kind of talk about what we do for this data set, right? And the key thing to highlight is we don't want to be just the FedEx that takes data from point A and store it in a different spot, right? We're not just trying to move data blindly from point A to point B. one of the things that we want to do when you protect AI is not just protect the raw data behind that, but also protect the meaning, protect the intelligence that feeds into these pipelines. So when, for example, you protect a table, a raw data set that you're trying to protect, what Haiku does is that it has the mechanism to capture not just the raw data sets, but also the views, the models, the routines, the access policies, the schema. So we are protecting all of that data set and not just your raw tables that are coming in. Again, a lot of the times you can get the raw table out and you get the raw table in, but if you don't know how that raw table is processed, and then you don't have good visibility into that data set, why I think we're extending beyond just protecting raw data set, but also everything that kind of sits around it, the views, the models and the routines and so on. And there was a question on, hey, consistency, right? In workloads like data lake houses, take BigQuery as an example, right? People store data sets